So hey guys, this is your favorite fictional vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto was the god of destruction who created the Silver Sea. Naruto x Misha Necron x Sasha Necron, the Misfit of Demon King Academy. But before we start, remember to subscribe and like this video. Now let's start. Chapter 1. The Azure Stranger. The Silver Sea rippled with disturbance for the first time in millennia. Its mercurial surface, neither liquid nor solid, neither matter nor energy, shimmered with prismatic light as something past rough dimensions that should have remained separate. In the endless expanse where fragments of destroyed realities drifted like cosmic debris, a single consciousness stirred. Ancient, powerful, awakening. Across dimensions, in a world where demons and magic ruled, a transfer authorization form appeared on the desk of High Chancellor Jericho Vex. The document bore an unfamiliar seal, a spiral suro, wounded by 9 esoteric symbols, and listed credentials so impeccable they could only be fabricated. Yet the magic authenticating the document was beyond questioning, as if reality itself insisted this transfer student must be accepted. The Chancellor's gnarled fingers traced the applicant's name. Naruto Uzumaki, he murmured, tasting unfamiliar syllables. What manner of demon bears such a name? The Demon King Academy's entranced courtyard teemed with students adorned in their formal crimson uniforms, their excited conversations creating a symphony of anticipation. The 7 crystal toes of the academy pierced the violet sky, each structure humming with magical energy that had been accumulating for 2,000 years since the Demon King's disappearance. The school trained the elite of demon society, those destined to shape the future of their realm. Sasha Necron, her silver hair gleaming in the morning light, moved through the crowd with practiced authority. Students instinctively parted before her, their whispers following in her wake. There goes the Necron heir. They say she's mastered the 7th blade art already. Did you hear? She challenged Professor Luthier and nearly won. Sasha ignored them all, her amber eyes fixed on the distant gates. Today marked the compatibility trials, where students would be evaluated and grouped according to their magical affinities. As a royal descendant, she had no real need for such assessments, but tradition demanded her participation. Her twin sister, Misha, walked silently beside her, pale fingers clutching an ANC. Iron tome bound in skin that occasionally pulsed like a beating heart. You're concerned about something, Misha observed, her voice barely audible above the crowd. Unlike her sister, Misha's presank. Inspired not awe but unease. Her deep crimson eyes seemed to peer through flesh and bone into the souls beneath. Sasha's jaw tightened. Father received a message from the archives. The 7th seal is showing fractures. Misha's fingers stilled on her book. That's impossible. The Demon King's magic is absolute. Apparently, not as absolute as we believed. Sasha's hand reflexively moved to the hilt of her sword, a nervous habit she'd developed since childhood. Something is changing in the realms. The Council of Elders has been in emergency session for 3 days. Their conversation LTED as an unfamiliar sensation prickled across their skin, like static electricity but tinged with something ancient and cold. Students around them suddenly quieted, heads turning toward the academy gates where a lone figure had appeared. He walked with casual confidence that bordered on irreverence, hands tucked into the pockets of a uniform that almost, but not quite, adhered to academy regulations. His jacket was unbuttoned, revealing a black shirt emblazoned with an orange spiral. Golden hair caught the light in spikes that defied gravity, framing a face marked with 6 symmetric scars resembling whiskers. But it was his eyes that captured attention, a blue so intense they seemed to contain oceans, depthless and ancient despite his youthful appearance. Who is that? Someone whispered. Sasha frowned. A new transfer student, apparently. Though I've never heard of transfers being accepted mid-semester. The stranger continued his unhurried progress through the courtyard, seeming why oblivious to the attention he attracted. As he passed an ancient monolith, one of 7 artifacts said to resonate with the Demon King's power, the stone emitted a low, mournful tone that vibrated the foundations of the academy itself. Professor Emeria, who had been supervising the gathering, dropped her crystal clipboard in shock. In 2,000 years, the monoliths had remained silent witnesses to generations of students. For one to react now, the blue-eyed stranger paused, glancing at the monolith with mild curiosity, as if hearing an old acquaintance call his name. Then, with a slight shrug, he continued walking. Misha's book snapped shut of its own accord. Interesting, she murmured, her crimson eyes tracking the newcomer with analytical intensity. Sasha felt a chill race down her spine, though she couldn't articulate why. He's just another arrogant recruit who thinks talent excuses poor manners. Perhaps, Misha replied, unconvinced. But the archives have been predicting the arrival of an azure harbinger for centuries. The timing seems significant. Before Sasha could respond, High Chancellor Vex appeared on the central platform, his ancient form Supo. RTED by magic that crackled visibly around his withered frame. The crowd fell silent as he raised gnarled hands. Students of the illustrious Demon King Academy, his voice resonated with magical amplification. Today you will undergo the compatibility trials to determine your magical affinities and team assignments for the coming term. As descendants of the 7 demon bloodlines, you represent the pinnacle of our kind's potential. Perform to your fullest capabilities. His roomy eyes scanned the crowd before settling on the golden-haired newcomer. I see our transfer student has arrived. Naruto Uzumaki will also participate in today's trials. I expect you all to demonstrate the hospitality befitting our institution's reputation. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Transfer students were rare enough, but one arriving on the day of the compatibility trials was unprecedented. The Chancellor continued, the trials will begin in the 7th arena in 1 hour. Prepare yourselves accordingly. With a gesture that seemed to fold space itself, he vanished from the platform. Students immediately clustered into their social hierarchies, royal descendants together, noble houses in their respective groups. Scholarship students hovering at the periphery. The mysterious transfer student, Naruto, remained apart, casually examining the architecture with the air of someone who found it simultaneously new and vaguely familiar. Sasha observed him with narrowed eyes. I don't recognize his family name. What bloodline could he possibly claim? Misha's gaze remained fixed on Naruto. Perhaps he doesn't have one. Don't be absurd. No one without demon blood could enter these grounds, much less transfer directly into advanced study. As if sensing their discussion, Naruto's oceanic gaze shifted toward them. For a heartbeat that seemed to stretch into eternity, Sasha felt as if she were being evaluated by something far older than the youthful face suggested, as if oceans had risen and fallen. Mountains had been ground to dust, and civilizations had flourished and collapsed in the time contained behind those eyes. Then he smiled, a disarmingly genuine expression that transformed his face from mysterious to approachable in an instant, and began walking directly toward them. Wonderful, Sasha muttered. He's coming this way. Misha said nothing, but her fingers tightened around her book until her knuckles whitened. Good morning, Naruto greeted them, his voice carrying unusual harmonics that seemed to resonate with something primal. I'm new heard from the Chancellor's announcement. Naruto Uzumaki. He extended a hand casually, as if they were equals meeting at a social gathering rather than royal descendants being approached by an unknown entity. Sasha regarded the offered hand with the disdain reserved for those who didn't understand protocol. Royals are not greeted with handshakes, transfer student. A bow would be the appropriate gesture. Naruto's smile didn't falter, but something ancient flickered behind his eyes. Ah, I see. Where I come from, we greet people as people, regardless of their birth. Nevertheless, he offered a bow that managed to be simultaneously respectful and subtly mocking. Better. Before Sasha could deliver a scathing response, Misha stepped forward, her crimson eyes studying Naruto with unsettling intensity. You, not from any of the 7 territories. Your magical signature doesn't match any known bloodline. It wasn't a question but a statement of fact. Naruto tilted his head, regarding her with newfound interest. That's quite a talent you have, seeing so much with just a glance. You're right. I'm not from around here. Let's just say I've been traveling for a very long time. Impossible, Sasha interjected. The barriers between demon realms have been sealed since the Demon King's disappearance. No one travels between territories without official sanction and extensive magical preparation. Naruto's smile took on an enigmatic quality. There are always ways through barriers if you know how to look. He glanced toward the monolith that had resonated at his passing. Sometimes the doors aren't as closed as people believe. Quote, a bell tolled across the academy grounds, signaling students to proceed to their preparation chambers. Sasha seized the opportunity to end the uncomfortable encounter. The trials await. I suggest you familiarize yourself with basic protocol before embarrassing yourself further. She turned with practiced grace, her silver hair sweeping behind her like a curtain. Misha lingered a moment longer, her gaze still fixed on Naruto. The seventh monolith has been dormant for 2 millennia, she said quietly. Until today. I wonder what that means about you, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto's expression sobered slightly. Sometimes old things remember other old things, he replied cryptically. See you at the trials, Misha Necron. As the sisters walked away, Misha spoke without turning. He knew my name. I never introduced myself. Sasha's steps faltered almost imperceptibly. He must have heard someone else address you. No one did. Misha clutched her book tighter. And I felt something when he spoke. Like standing at the edge of an abyss and feeling it look back. Don't be dramatic. He's just another student with delusions of importance. But as they entered the preparation chamber, Sasha couldn't shake the sensation that something fundamental had shifted in the world, as if cosmic gears long frozen had suddenly begun to turn once more. The seventh arena stretched below the observation platforms like a massive amphitheater carved from obsidian. Ancient runes pulsed along its circumference, designed to contain even the most catastrophic magical discharges. The arena had been created by the Demon King himself as a testing ground for his most powerful generals, and it had remained largely unchanged for 2,000 years. Students gathered on the observation platforms according to rank and lineage, while the 50 participants in today's trial assembled in the preparation chambers below. Anticipation hummed through the air, nearly tangible in its intensity. Professor Emeria stood at the center of the arena, her ceremonial robes billowing despite the absence of wind. The compatibility trials determine not only your magical affinities but your potential as defenders of our realm. You will face 3 challenges: power, control, and adaptability. Those who excel will earn coveted positions in specialized training programs. Those who fail, her smile thinned. Well, there are always administrative positions for those with limited magical potential. In the preparation chamber, Naruto leaned against a pillar, RVing the other participants with mild interest. Most avoided his gaze, unsettled by the newcomer who had caused a monolith to sing. A few bolder students cast challenging glares his way, territorial animals sensing an intruder. You shouldn't be so relaxed, came a smooth voice beside him. A tall student with crimson hair and eyes like molten gold approached, his uniform adorned with the additional emblems of advanced study. The trials have a 15% fatality rate among first-time participants. Naruto's expression remained unchanged. Is that meant to frighten me, or are you just making conversation? The student's smile revealed teeth filed to points, a traditional modification among certain demon bloodlines. Merely offering friendly advice. I'm Cress Barthor, 3rd Circle North. Obel and top-ranked combat specialist in our year. He extended a hand adorned with rings bearing complex enchantments. Naruto clasped it briefly. Naruto Uzumaki. New guy. Cress's eyes narrowed slightly at the casual response. No family affiliation. No rank. Curious. His gaze traveled over Naruto's non-standard uniform. The last transfer student we received was exiled royalty from the Eastern Territories. What circumstances bring you to our illustrious academy? I got bored, Naruto replied with a shrug. Thought I'd try something new. Before Cress could respond to this bewildering statement, a crystalline chime resonated through the chamber, signaling participants to enter the arena. Students moved in ordered procession according to rank and bloodline, with Sasha and Misha Necron on at the forefront as royal descendants. Cress, as a high-ranking noble, followed several paces behind. Naruto, having no established position in the hierarchy, simply joined at the back with the scholarship students and those of mixed bloodlines. This immediately drew disapproving murmurs from several instructors, who expected new students to wait for formal placement. Professor Emeria made a notation on her clipboard, her expression tightening with displeasure. The 50 participants formed a circle around the central platform where Emeria stood. With a gesture, she activated the arena's ancient magic. The obsidian floor beneath them illuminated with complex runic patterns that shifted and flowed like liquid starlight. The first trial tests raw power, she announced. Each participant will channel their magical energy into the assessment crystal. The crystal measures not only magnitude but also quality and potential of your demonic energy. Assistants distributed palm-sized crystals of smoky quartz to each student. These artifacts, created in the early days of the academy, could absorb and measure magical energy without shattering under extreme pressure. Begin when ready, Emeria instructed. Channel your power gradually, then with increasing intensity. The crystal will change color according to your ranking. Students began focusing their energy, the air around them, distorting with heat and magical pressure. The crystals in their hands glowed with various colors, violet and blue for the stronger participants, green and yellow for the average, red and orange for T. Ho's struggling to manifest significant power. Sasha's crystal blazed with intense violet light, casting dramatic shadows across her determined features. Beside her, Misha's crystal glowed with a deep blue luminescence that pulsed with hypnotic rhythm. Both performances drew appreciative murmurs from the observers. Cress, not to be outdone, channeled his energy with theatrical flourish. His cries, tall, flared with violet brightness that nearly matched Sasha's, causing him to smile with smug satisfaction. Other students produced varying results, their performances catalogued by assistant professors with clinical precision. Some struggled visibly, sweat beading on their foreheads as they strained to impress. Others channeled their power born of extensive training. When Naruto's turn arrived, he gazed at the crystal with mild curiosity, turning it over in his palm as if examining an interesting but ultimately mundane object. Then, with casual indifference, he directed a fraction of his awareness into it. The crystal remained dark for several heartbeats, prompting snickers from nearby students. Professor Emeria's pen hovered over her clipboard, ready to record another disappointment. Then, without warning, the crystal shattered, not into fragments, but into dust so fine it seemed to evaporate from Naruto's open palm. A concussive wave of pressure rippled outward, strong enough to stagger nearby students despite the arena's protective enchantments. Stunned silence fell across the arena. Professor Emeria's clipboard slipped from nerveless fingers. In 2,000 years of records, no student had ever destroyed an assessment crystal with raw power alone. The artifacts had been designed to channel and absorb even the most catastrophic magical discharge. Oops, Naruto said into the silence, brushing crystal dust from his palm with casual unconcern. Sorry about that. Do you have another one I could try? I'll be more careful this time. Emeria stared at him, her composed facade cracking for the first time in decades of teaching. That's not possible, she whispered, barely audible. Then, recovering her professional demeanor with visible effort, she straightened. Mr. Uzumaki, please proceed to the isolation platform for individual assessment. Whispers erupted throughout the arena as Naruto shrugged and walked toward the elevated platform normally reserved foe. Are students who demonstrated unusual or potentially dangerous abilities. The last student sent there had manifested spontaneous reality distortion and had promptly been recruited by the Council of Elders for specialized training. From their position at the front of the formation, the Necron sisters watched with differing expressions, Sasha's face tight with suspicion, Misha's eyes wide with intellectual fascination. He's restraining himself, Misha murmured, so quietly only her sister could hear. What we just witnessed wasn't power. It was poor control of something much greater. Sasha's hand drifted to her sword hilt again. No student possesses that level of raw energy. Not even royal bloodlines. Perhaps he isn't just a student, Misha replied, watching as Naruto ascended to the isolation platform with the same casual demeanor he'd displayed since arriving. Perhaps he isn't just a demon. On the observation platform reserved for faculty, High Chancellor Vex leaned forward, High's ancient eyes narrowed with calculation. Beside him, a hooded figure spoke in tones too low for others to hear. The patterns match the prophecy, Chancellor. The Azure Harbinger arrives as the seventh seal weakens. It cannot be coincidence. Vex nodded almost imperceptibly. Have the archivists prepare the concordance chamber. If he truly is what we suspect, there are protocols that must be followed. And if he represents a threat, the Chancellor's withered hand tightened around his staff. Then may the Demon King forgive us for what must be done. The second trial began after a brief recess during which the arena's protective enchantments were reinforced. Students whispered among themselves, casting furtive glances toward Naruto, who had been instructed to remain on the isolation platform. Additional faculty members had appeared in the observation areas, drawn by reports of the unprecedented incident. Professor Emeria, visibly more cautious now, addressed the participants. The control trial assesses your precision and finesse in magical application. Each of you will be presented with a sequence of targets requiring increasingly delicate manipulation. Your score reflects both accuracy and efficiency. Assistants activated the arena's transformation magic, causing sections of the floor to rise and reshape into an obstacle course filled with crystalline targets of varying sizes and complexities. Some targets required direct hits with specific types of energy, others needed to be influenced without being touched, and the most challenging demanded sequential activation in precise patterns. Students proceeded through the course one by one, their performances evaluated by a panel of judges. Misha Necron demonstrated exceptional precision, her magic flowing liquid silver to activate targets with minimal energy expenditure. Her perfect score drew appreciative applause from the observers. Sasha, though less naturally suited to delicate manipulation, compensated with intense concentration and methodical technique. Her performance, while not as elegant as her sister's, demonstrated the disciplined approach expected of royal descendants. When Naruto's turn arrived, speculation buzzed through the arena. Would he destroy the entire course as he had the assessment crystal? Faculty members tensed, ready to activate emergency containment protocols if necessary. Naruto descended from the isolation platform with unhurried steps. As he approached the starting position, Professor Emeria raised a cautionary hand. Mr. Uzumaki, this trial requires restraint and precision. Please adjust your output accordingly to avoid incidents. Naruto nodded, a hint of amusement playing at the corners of his mouth. I'll be gentle, he promised, though somewhat. In his tone suggested he found the concern entertaining rather than warranted. As he entered the course, observers leaned forward expectantly. Naruto moved with fluid grace that seemed at odds with his previously casual demeanor. His first magical projection, a thread of energy so finely controlled it resembled spun glass, activated the initial target with such precision that the crystal resonated with a perfect musical tone. He proceeded through the course with increasing speed, his movements becoming almost dance-like. Where other students had approached the challenge with careful concentration, Naruto navigated it with intuitive ease, as if the magic were an extension of his body rather than a force to be commanded. The most challenging sequence, a cascading arrangement of crystals that required simultaneous activation in a specific harmonic pattern, had frustrated even top students. Naruto approached it differently. Instead of directing separate streams of energy at each target, he created a complex matrix of interconnected threads that resembled a three-dimensional seal array. With a single gesture, he activated the entire pattern simultaneously. The crystals resonated in perfect harmony, creating a chord so beautiful that several observers gasped audibly. It was not merely a technical achievement but an artistic one, magic elevated to its highest expression. Professor Emeria's expression shifted from cautious concern to reluctant admiration. Perfect execution, she announced, unable to find fault despite her evident desire to do so. Full marks for the control trial. As Naruto returned to the isolation platform, Cress Barthor's golden eyes narrowed with calculation. The transfer student had just demonstrated both overwhelming power and impeccable control, a combination that threatened Cress's carefully cultivated position in the academy hierarchy. Around him, other ambitious students reached similar conclusions. The newcomer represented either an opportunity or a threat, depending on how he could be approached. In the royal section, Sasha frowned thoughtfully. His technique doesn't match any established school. It's as if he's invented his own magical language. Misha nodded, her crimson eyes never leaving Naruto's retreating form. The energy patterns resemble ancient ceiling arrays from the first age. No one has replicated those successfully in over 1,000 years. How would a transfer student access such forbidden knowledge? Sasha demanded. Those techniques are sealed in the restricted archives. Perhaps, Misha suggested quietly. He doesn't need access to the archives if he remembers the first age himself. Sasha stared. Impossible. Even the oldest living demons barely reach 3 centuries. Is it impossible? Misha countered. Or merely unprecedented in our limited experience. Before Sasha could respond, the arena's warning horns sounded, signaling the beginning of the final trial. The adaptability tria, L, was traditionally the most unpredictable and dangerous component of the compatibility assessment. It tested students' ability to respond to unexpected threats under pressure, a vital skill for those who would eventually defend demon territories against external threats. The arena floor shimmered and transformed once more, this time into a featureless plane of obsidian. Professor Emeria addressed the participants with heightened formality, her voice resonating with magical authority. The final trial will assess your combat adaptability against conjured opponents. Each participant will face manifestations calibrated to challenge their individual capabilities. These constructs possess limited sentience and will escalate their tactics based on your performance. The trial ends when you realize all opponents or can no longer continue. She gestured toward a massive crystalline apparatus suspended above the arena, the tactical conjuration engine, an ancient device rumored to contain fragments of the Demon King's own combat experience. For safety reasons, participants will enter individually rather than as a group. Royal descendants will proceed first, followed by noble houses, and then general admission students. Sasha Necron stepped forward, her hand resting confidently on her sword hilt. As the arena's magic enveloped her, 3 armored constructs materialized, each bearing weapons and armor that complemented their tactical roles. One wielded a massive hammer for crushing blows, another carried twin daggers for rapid strikes, while the third remained at a distance with a staff designed for magical projection. Sasha's combat style combined classical swordsmanship with explosive bursts of destructive magic. She moved with lethal precision, her silver blade leaving rails of azure energy as it cleaved through the first construct's defenses. When the remaining opponents attempted to flank her, she unleashed a controlled explosion of power that staggered them before finishing each with decisive strikes. Her performance, completing the trial in under 4 minutes, earned respectful applause from the observers. It was not a record but certainly befitting a royal descendant. Misha's approach differed dramatically from her sister's. Rather than engaging directly, she manipulated the arena itself, altering gravitational forces around her opponents and creating localized distortions that confused their targeting systems. When they finally reached her, they discovered too late that she had created simulacra of herself while her true form circled behind them. The constructs collapsed inward, crushed by their own momentum as Misha rewrote the magical principles governing their manifestation. Her performance, though less visually dramatic than Sasha's, demonstrated an innovative approach that drew murmurs of appreciation from the faculty. Complex problem-solving was valued as highly as combat prowess in advanced studies. Other students followed with varying degrees of success. Cress Barthor's performance proved particularly impressive, combining aggressive offense with tactical foresight. His constructs, numbering 5 rather than the standard 3, fell to a combination of overwhelming force and calculated precision. As the trials progressed, anticipation built regarding Naruto's upcoming performance. Faculty members conferred in hushed tones, apparently debating the appropriate challenge level for a student who had already demonstrated anomalous capabilities. When Naruto's turn finally arrived, the arena fell silent with expectation. Professor Emeria approached the tactical conjuration engine and made several adjustments to its configuration before announcing, "Mr. Uzumaki, given your performance in previous trials, you will face an advanced challenge scenario. The constructs will be enhanced with additional capabilities and tactical programming." Naruto stepped into the arena with the same relaxed posture he'd maintained throughout the day. Hands tucked casually into his pockets. "Sounds fun," he remarked, drawing scandalized murmurs from traditionalists who expected solemn respect for the ancient trial. The conjuration engine hummed with escalating intensity, drawing significantly more power than it had for previous participants. Light coalesced in 5 locations around Naruto, forming not the standard humanoid constructs but more complex manifestations. 2 resembled predatory beasts with crystalline scales and energy-wreathed claws. Another took the form of a hovering orb surrounded by rotating blades. The foe, Earth, appeared as a towering giant with multiple arms, each wielding a different elemental weapon. The 5th and apparently most dangerous remained partially translucent, its form shifting and rippling like disturbed water. Observers gasped at the unprecedented assembly. Such constructs were typically reserved for graduation trials of exceptional students, not entrance assessments. Naruto surveyed his opponents with mild interest before finally removing his hands from his pockets. 5 against 1 seems a bit unbalanced, he commented, rolling his shoulders as if preparing for light exercise rather than combat. But I guess that's the point of an adaptability test. The constructs attacked simultaneously, coordinating with tactical precision that suggested a unified intelligence directing their movements. The beast forms circled with predatory patience while the blade sphere launched projectiles from above. The giant advanced directly, forcing Naruto to divide his attention across multiple threat vectors. Instead of retreating or defending, Naruto stepped directly toward the giant, moving with sudden speed that surprised observers. As elemental weapons descended toward him, he sidestepped with minimal movement, each attack missing by mere centimeters. His expression remained calm, almost analytical, as he studied the construct's attack patterns. The hovering sphere adjusted its targeting and launched a barrage of energy blades that should have been impossible to evade in such close quarters. Naruto responded with a technique no one recognized, his hands blurred through a sequence of positions that resembled, yet differed from, traditional casting forms. The space around him distorted subtly, causing the blades to curve around his body as if deflected by an invisible shield. Spatial manipulation without a casting circle, Misha whispered, her eyes wide. That's theoretically impossible. The beast constructs pounced from opposite directions, their synchronized attack designed to leave no escape route. Naruto's response defied conventional combat doctrine. Instead of choosing one threat to counter first, he created what appeared to be a perfect duplicate of himself. Both Narutos moved in mirrored patterns, intercepting the beasts with precisely timed counters that shattered their crystalline forms on impact. Faculty members exchanged alarmed glances. Physical duplication was restricted magic, forbidden to students below 7th year specialized training. The giant construct, recognizing the threat level of its opponent, activated its emergency protocols. Its form expanded, absorbing ambient magical energy to increase its combat capabilities. Additional arms sprouted from its torso, each manifesting more dangerous weapons infused with chaotic energy. Naruto, both of him, regarded this development with the first real interest he'd shown during the trials. Now that's more like it, one commented, while the other cracked his knuckles in anticipation. The giant launched a devastating assault, its weapons tearing through the arena floor and sending shockwaves across the protective barriers. Observers flinched back as the magical containment trained under forces it wasn't designed to withstand, moved in perfect coordination, weaving between attacks with fluid grace that made combat look like choreographed dance. They never directly blocked the giant's strikes, instead redirecting momentum and turning the construct's power against itself. With each exchange, they positioned themselves more advantageously, gradually maneuvering the giant into a vulnerable configuration. The fifth construct, the fluid, shifting entity that had remained inactive until now, suddenly intervened. It flowed across the arena like liquid mercury before engulfing both Naruto duplicates in its amorphous form. This construct, observers realized with shock, was designed as a last resort containment measure for opponents too powerful to defeat conventionally. For several heartbeats, the arena fell silent as the mercury-like construct pulsed and rippled around its captured prey. Professor Emeria raised her hand, preparing to declare the trial complete. Then the construct shuddered. Cracks appeared across its surface, leaking brilliant blue light that intensified until observers had to shield their eyes. With a sound like shattering glass amplified 1,000-fold, the construct exploded outward, dissolving into motes of light that dissipated into the air. Where 2 Narutos had stood before, now only one remained. His uniform was untouched, his posture relaxed, but his eyes had changed. The casual confidence had been replaced by something ancient and powerful, as if a mask had slipped, revealing a glimpse of something vast and primal beneath the human facade. The giant construct, now alone, hesitated, a programmed response to unexpected developments. That moment of hesitation proved fatal. Naruto raised one hand, palm outward, and made a simple closing gesture. Reality itself seemed to fold around the giant, compressing it from all directions until it imploded with a thunderous concussion that reverberated through the arena. Silence fell, broken only by the fading echoes of the implosion. Naruto stood alone in the center of the arena, his eyes gradually returning to their previous state as he surveyed the destruction around him. Then, as if remembering himself, he tucked his hands back into his pockets and glanced toward Professor Imaria with a questioning expression. "Is that it?" he asked. "Or are there more?" Imaria stared at him, her clipboard forgotten in her hand. When she finally spoke, her voice carried none of its usual authoritative resonance. "The trial is complete, Mr. Uzumaki. Please return to the observation area." As Naruto walked away, the arena's maintenance enchantments activated, repairing the damage caused during the combat. Students whispered frantically among themselves, reviewing what they'd witnessed. The faculty observation platform had erupted into urgent discussion, with several members gesturing emphatically toward ancient texts they'd brought for reference. High Chancellor Vex watched in silence, his ancient eyes following Naruto's retreating form. The hooded figure beside him leaned close once more. "The prophecy speaks true. He bears all the markers of the Azure Destroyer." Vex nodded slowly. "Summon the council. The protocols must be initiated immediately. And the Necron sisters. They've already shown interest in him. Monitor them closely. If the prophecy is correct, they play crucial roles in what is to come, for better or worse." As students filed out of the arena following the completion of the trials, Naruto found himself approached by various groups, each with their own agenda. Noble-born students sought alliances with the powerful newcomer. Ambitious scholars hoped to learn his unusual techniques. Social climbers simply wanted association with someone who had caused such a sensation. Naruto navigated these approaches with casual politeness that nevertheless maintained a certain distance. He accepted compliments with humble nods, deflected technical questions with vague responses, and gently discouraged those seeking to establish immediate connections. "Quite the performance," came a smooth voice from behind him. Cress Barthor approached, with a carefully calculated expression of admiration that didn't reach his golden eyes. "You've certainly made an impression on your first day." Naruto shrugged. "Wasn't trying to impress anyone. Just did what came naturally." "Indeed, what comes naturally to you would be impossible for most final-year students." Cress maintained his friendly facade while studying Naruto with predatory assessment. "Such talents attract attention, not all of it welcome. You might benefit from alliances with established families who understand academy politics." "Thanks for the offer," Naruto replied, his tone pleasant but firm. "But I prefer finding my own way." Cress's smile tightened imperceptibly. "As you wish. Just remember that neutrality is rarely an option in our world. Eventually, everyone must choose sides." With a respectful nod that contained a hint of warning, he rejoined his circle of supporters. As the crowd dispersed, Naruto found himself alone in a side corridor that led toward the dormitory complexes. Or, he realized, not quite alone. Misha Necron stood in the shadows, her crimson eyes regarding him with unblinking intensity. "You held back," she stated without preamble. "Even during the final trial. You restrained yourself significantly." Naruto tilted his head, studying her with newfound interest. "What makes you think that?" "The pattern disruptions in your magical signature. They indicate containment seals, extremely sophisticated ones, integrated into your very being." She stepped closer, her pale fingers clutching her sentient tome. "No ordinary demon possesses such modifications." "You see a lot for someone so young," Naruto observed, neither confirming nor denying her assessment. "Age is relative," Misha replied, "especially for beings who exist outside conventional timelines." A flicker of genuine surprise crossed Naruto's features before his casual mask returned. "That's an interesting theory." "Not a theory, an observation based on evidence." Misha opened her book, revealing pages covered in script that shifted and rearranged itself continuously. "The archives have been tracking anomalies in the Silver Sea for centuries. Disturbances that correlate with the appearance of entities bearing your exact magical signature." Naruto's expression sobered. "You shouldn't be investigating such things, Misha Necron. Some knowledge is dangerous even to those born of royal blood." "Knowledge is never the danger," she countered. "Only how it's applied." She turned a page in her book, revealing an ancient illustration depicting a figure surrounded by swirling energy that resembled Naruto's magical signature during the trials. The Azure Harbinger. The destroyer who creates. The prophecy speaks of your return when the seventh seal weakens. Prophecies are unreliable, Naruto said, his voice carrying new undertones of ancient weariness. They see fragments of possibility and mistake them for certainty. Perhaps. Misha closed her book carefully. But coincidences accumulate beyond statistical probability. Your arrival. The monolith's response. The fracturing seal. Something approaches, Naruto Uzumaki, and you stand at its center. Before he could respond, footsteps echoed from the adjoining corridor. Sasha Necron appeared, her expression hardening when she saw Naruto and Misha in what appeared to be private conversation. There you are, she addressed her sister with poorly concealed concern. The faculty is requesting your presence in the archives immediately. Her gaze shifted to Naruto, suspicious and challenging. What are you discussing with my sister? Ancient history, Naruto replied with a hint of irony. A subject in which she's remarkably well versed. Sasha stepped between them, her protective intent obvious. Misha's historical knowledge is family business. I suggest you focus on adapting to academy protocols rather than pursuing inappropriate conversations with royal descendants. Naruto raised his hands in moance intended. I was just complimenting her scholarship. Save your compliments, Sasha retorted. We've had enough transfer students attempting to curry favor through Misha's influence. She turned to her sister. The Chancellor himself requested your consultation. We shouldn't keep him waiting. Misha allowed herself to be led away, but glanced back once with an expression of complicated meaning. We'll continue our historical discussion another time, Naruto Uzumaki. I have many more questions about ancient times. As they disappeared around a corner, Naruto's casual demeanor faded. His eyes took on that ancient quality again as he gazed toward a window that offered a view of the distant horizon. Beyond the Academy's protective barriers, storm clouds were gathering, unusual. In a season typically marked by clear skies. It's starting already, he murmured to himself. The seals are weaker than I expected. He raised one hand, examining his palm where intricate patterns briefly shimmered beneath his skin. Complex sealing arrays of his own design, created to contain something vast and dangerous within a mortal form. Just a little longer, he told himself. Just until I understand what's happening here. The patterns faded from visibility, and Naruto resumed his casual posture before continuing toward the dormitories. Unknown to him, a shadow detached itself from an alcove high above, moving with preternatural silence as it followed his path. The shadow's eyes gleamed with hatred and triumph. Found you, it whispered in a voice like grinding stone. After all these centuries, the Azure Destroyer walks among mortals once more. From a small crystalline device in the shadow's hand, a response came in sibilant tones, confirm identity before proceeding. The seventh protocol tolerates no errors. Confirmation unnecessary, the shadow replied. The Silver Sea's creator can wear any face, but never hide his essence. I will eliminate him before he regains his full power. Proceed with caution. You face the god of destruction in mortal form. Even constrained, he remains dangerous. The shadow's mouth stretched in a grotesque parody of a smile, revealing teeth too numerous and sharp for any natural being. Gods can die like anything else. Especially gods who choose to forget themselves. With that ominous declaration, the shadow dissolved into the Academy's deepening twilight, leaving no trace of its presence save a lingering chill that raised goosebumps on the skin of students passing through the corridor. The ancient game had begun again, as it had countless times across millennia. But this cycle carried differences from those that came before: new players, new stakes, and a god of destruction who had deliberately forgotten his own nature. In the distance, thunder rumbled across the Academy grounds, and the first droplets of rain began to fall. The Necron sisters' private quarters occupied the eastern tower of the royal residence complex, an arrangement that reflected both their status and their somewhat isolated position within Academy society. Unlike other royal descendants who maintained extensive social circles, the Necrons kept largely to themselves. Their reputation for unusual abilities inspiring more wary respect than genuine friendship among their peers. Their living space reflected their divergent personalities. Sasha's chambers featured practical furnishings arranged with military precision, weapons displayed on walls, tactical manuals organized by subject, training equipment positioned for optimal use. Misha's adjacent rooms overflowed with books, scrolls, and artifacts collected during her archival research, arranged in patterns only she understood. The shared sitting room between their personal chambers served as neutral territory where they could discuss matters of mutual concern. It was here that Sasha confronted her sister after their meeting with the Chancellor. "You're being reckless," Sasha stated, pacing before the fireplace where blue flames consumed logs without actually burning them, a permanent enchantment that provided heat without smoke. "The transfer student is clearly dangerous, possibly unstable. And you're encouraging his attention." Misha sat in her favorite chair, her crimson eyes following the dancing flames. "His name is Naruto Uzumaki, and he's neither unstable nor simply dangerous. He's something else entirely. That's precisely my concern." Sasha stopped pacing to face her sister directly. "The Chancellor didn't summon you to consult about historical oddities. He wanted confirmation of the Azure Harbinger prophecy. That alone should tell you the faculty considers him a serious threat." "Or a serious opportunity," Misha countered. "The prophecy speaks of destruction and creation in equal measure. The Azure Harbinger heralds the end of one age and the beginning of another. Endings tend to be unpleasant for those caught in the transition," Sasha retorted. "Especially when gods are involved." Misha looked up sharply. "You believe it, then? That he might be a god in mortal form?" Sasha's expression tightened. "I believe in observable evidence. No student shatters assessment crystals. No normal demon manipulates space without casting circles. No ordinary transfer student recognizes your name without introduction." She gripped the hilt of her sword unconsciously. "Whether he's divine or simply ancient and powerful, he represents an unknown variable in an already unstable situation." "The seventh seal," Misha began, "as our family's responsibility," Sasha interrupted. "Which is precisely why we should maintain distance from potentially destabilizing influences." "Or precisely why we should understand what's happening," Misha countered. She opened her book, revealing pages now filled with calculations and probability matrices. "The patterns aren't coincidental, Sasha. His arrival correlates exactly with the increasing fracture rate in the seal. Either he's causing it, or he's responding to it." Sasha frowned at the complex equations. "The faculty has forbidden further investigation. Chancellor Vex was explicit about that. Since when do you trust the Chancellor's judgment above our own observations?" Misha asked quietly. "He's hiding something. During our meeting, his magical signature fluctuated whenever Naruto was mentioned, a clear indicator of concealed knowledge." Before Sasha could respond, a subtle vibration passed through the tower, not physical movement, but a disturbance in the magical barriers that protected their quarters. Both sisters tensed, their senses extending outward to identify the intrusion. "Perimeter breach," Sasha whispered, drawing her sword in a fluid motion. The blade gleamed with suppressed energy, responding to her battle readiness. Misha closed her book and pressed it to her chest, where it seemed to melt into her body, a family technique for protecting valuable artifacts. "Third quadrant." Approaching from below, she confirmed, her eyes unfocusing slightly as she tracked the magical disturbance. They moved in practiced coordination, positioning themselves to confront the intruder. Royal quarters were protected by ancient enchantments that should have been impenetrable to anyone below High Chancellor rank. Any entity capable of breaching those defenses represented a serious threat. The disturbance intensified, centering on the ornate carpet covering the sitting room floor. The intricate patterns woven into the fabric began to shift and ripple, colors bleed, and reforming into unfamiliar configurations. "Shadow walk technique," Misha identified, her voice tense. "Advanced application. Whoever this is has mastered forbidden transportation methods." The carpet's center darkened, as if a hole were opening into endless night. From this void, a figure began to emerge, first clawed hands gripping the edges of reality itself, then a humanoid form that seemed composed of living shadow. As it pulled itself into the room, details resolved: obsidian armor, pression and concealment, eyes that glowed with violet malevolence. "Necron descendants," the intruder acknowledged, its voice resonating with unnatural harmonics. "Guardians of the seventh seal. I come with warning and purpose." Sasha's blade leveled at the intruder's throat. "Identify yourself, and your affiliation before I separate your head from your shoulders." The masked figure made no move to defend itself, seemingly unconcerned by the deadly weapon at its neck. I am Vazrith, sentinel of the 7th Protocol. My allegiance is to the original compact made when the Demon King sealed the dimensional barriers. Misha stepped forward, her analytical gaze studying the intruder. The 7th Protocol was disbanded 1,000 years ago when the last threat to the barriers was neutralized. Disbanded but not destroyed, Vazrith corrected. We maintain eternal vigilance against the threat that could unravel everything your ancestor worked to protect. The Azure Harbinger, Misha said quietly. The masked figure's attention shifted fully to her. You've recognized him already. Good. That simplifies matters. You mean Naruto Uzumaki, Sasha stated, her sword unwavering. The transfer student. Names are meaningless for beings like him, Vazrith replied dismissively. Quote, he has worn 1,000 faces across countless cycles. Sometimes destroyer, sometimes savior, always catastrophe for established order. You're planning to kill him, Misha realized, her voice perfectly calm despite the implication. That's why you've revealed yourself to us. You want our cooperation. The masked figure inclined its head slightly. The Necron bloodline has always understood necessary sacrifices. Your ancestor helped imprison him once before. Now his bindings weaken, and his power grows. He must be eliminated before he fully awakens. Sasha's eyes narrowed. If he's as dangerous as you claim, why approach us? Why not simply assassinate him directly? Because I failed. For the first time, Vazrith's confident tone faltered. I attempted elimination during his arrival transit through the Silver Sea. His defenses, even in weakened state, proved formidable. You attacked a potentially divine entity and survived. Misha's interest visibly intensified. That suggests you possess countermeasures specifically designed for his weaknesses. Precisely. Vazrith reached into a dimensional pocket and withdrew a crystalline dagger that pulsed with sickly violet light. This weapon was forged from fragments of his original bindings. It can penetrate his defenses and disrupt his essence, but only if delivered by someone he trusts. Someone who can approach without triggering his instinctive protections. Sasha's expression hardened with disgust. You're asking us to befriend him, gain his confidence, and then betray him with an assassination. Have you forgotten who we are? The Necron line does not resort to such dishonorable tactics. Honor is a luxury when facing extinction, Vazrith countered. The prophecy is clear. When the Azure Harbinger awakens fully, the barriers between worlds collapse. Chaos consumes order. Reality itself unravels. Prophecies can be misinterpreted, Misha noted, her gaze fixed on the pulsing dagger. Are deliberately manipulated to serve agendas. The masked figure's posture stiffened. You doubt the wisdom of your own ancestor. The Demon King himself established the 7th Protocol after witnessing firsthand the devastation the Harbinger can unleash. I question selective interpretations from secret organizations that operate without oversight, Misha replied evenly. The complete prophecy contains elements you're conspicuously omitting. Vazrith's glowing eyes narrowed. Your archival access has apparently exceeded authorized boundaries. Dangerous knowledge for one so young. Knowledge becomes dangerous when suppressed and fragmented. Misha countered. The full prophecy speaks of the Azure Harbinger as both destroyer and creator, the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. Necessary transformation rather than simple annihilation. Philosophical distinctions mean little when worlds burn, Vazrith snapped, patience visibly thinning. I offered partnership out of respect for your bloodline. If you refuse, I will proceed alone, though with regrettably lower probability of success. Sasha's sword hadn't wavered during the entire exchange. Now it gleamed brighter as she channeled additional power into the blade. You'll proceed nowhere. Unauthorized entry into royal quarters is punishable by immediate execution. Your connection to a disbanded protocol offers no immunity. The masked figure sighed, a sound like wind through ancient ruins. I had hoped for wisdom from the Necron line. Instead, I find the short-sightedness of youth. With blinding speed, Vazrith flicked one hand outward, releasing a cascade of shadow needles that extinguished all light in the chamber. Sasha reacted instantly, her blade sweeping in a defensive arc that intercepted the magical projectiles with supernatural precision. Misha simultaneously activated a protective barrier, her hands weaving complex patterns that caused the air to solidify around them. When light returned seconds later, Vazrith had vanished, leaving only a lingering chill and the crystalline dagger resting on the carpet where the intruder had stood. A test, Misha observed, studying the weapon without touching it. He want D to evaluate our reactions and combat readiness. Sasha maintained her guard position, scanning the room for additional threats. And leave his assassination tool where we might be tempted to use it. We should report this to the Chancellor, Misha said, though her tone lacked conviction. Sasha sheathed her sword with a decisive motion. No, the Chancellor is concealing information about Naruto, to Uzumaki, and possibly about this 7th protocol as well. Until we understand the complete situation, we trust no one outside ourselves. Not even the transfer student? Misha asked, her gaze still fixed on the pulsing dagger. Especially not him, Sasha replied firmly. Whatever he is, god, demon, or something else entirely, he's the catalyst for these events. We observe, we investigate, but we maintain our distance. Misha finally looked up, her crimson eyes reflecting the violet light of the abandoned weapon. I'm not certain distance is an option anymore, sister. If the prophecy speaks true, we're already entangled in his destiny, and he in ours. Outside their tower, the strange storm continued to intensify, lightning illuminating the academy grounds in brief, harsh flashes. With each thunderclap, the ancient monoliths scattered throughout the campus resonated in harmonic response, as if awakening from millennia of slumber to acknowledge the presence of something long forgotten. The game of gods and demons had begun again, with the Necron sisters unwillingly drawn into its deadly complexities. And somewhere in the labyrinthine dormitories of the academy, a transfer stewed. NT, who might be the god of destruction, gazed out at the unnatural storm, remembering fragments of a past so ancient it predated the very concept of memory itself. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Echoes of Divinity. Morning light filtered through enchanted windows, bending at impossible angles to illuminate every corner of the academy's grand lecture hall. The chamber, designed to accommodate 300 ed students in tiered seating that rose in a perfect semicircle, hummed with anticipation. Word of yesterday's unprecedented events had spread throughout the academy, drawing even senior students who normally disdained first-year proceedings. Naruto slouched in a middle row seat, arms crossed behind his head in a posture of casual indifference that contrasted sharply with the rigid attentiveness of his peers. Around him, other students maintained a careful distance, close enough to observe but not so near as to suggest association. Their whispered conversations reached his ears despite their attempts at discretion. They say he destroyed an ass touch. I heard the Chancellor summoned the Council of Elders after the trials. My cousin in administration says his registration documents appeared out of nowhere. Naruto allowed a slight smile to touch his lips, neither confirming nor denying the rumors swirling around him. His gaze drifted toward the chamber's entrance where the Necron sisters had just arrived. They moved with the measured grace of royal descendants, but their expressions revealed contrasting reactions to the attention they attracted. Sasha maintained rigid composure, her silver hair precisely arranged. Uniform impeccable. Misha appeared almost oblivious to the stares, her crimson eyes scanning the chamber with analytical detachment until they locked onto Naruto's relaxed form. For a heartbeat that stretched uncomfortably, they regarded each other across the distance, ancient blue meeting timeless crimson. Then Misha inclined her head in the barest acknowledgement before following her sister to seats reserved for royal bloodlines. The lecture hall's massive doors swung closed with thunderous finality, and High Chancellor Vex materialized on the central platform. Today, his ancient form appeared more substantial, his robes of office crackling with visible energy that suggested he had augmented his physical presence for the occasion. Students of the Demon King Academy. His voice resonated without magical amplification, commanding immediate silence. Yesterday's compatibility trials have resulted in unprecedented adjustments to our traditional curriculum. Murmurs rippled through the assembly despite ingrained respect for the Chancellor's authority. Curriculum changes typically required months of faculty deliberation and approval from territorial governors. The faculty has identified exceptional talent distribution in this year's cohort, Vex continued, his roomy eyes briefly scanning the crowd before settling on Naruto. To properly nurture these abilities, we are implementing specialized training pairs and research teams effective immediately. A massive crystalline display materialized above the platform, showing student Nam's arranged in patterns too complex for immediate comprehension. Gasps and exclamations erupted as implications became clear. Traditional hierarchical groupings had been abandoned in favor of complementary ability matching. Regardless of bloodline or social status, These partnerships have been determined through comprehensive analysis of magical affinities, combat styles, and developmental potential, Vex explained. His tone brooking no argument. Your assigned partner will be your primary training associate for all combat and practical applications during this academic cycle. The display shifted, resolving into clearer configurations that allowed students to locate their assignments. The volume of conversation increased as implications became apparent, royal descendants paired with commoners. Traditional rivals forced into cooperation, conventional hierarchies disrupted. Cress Barthor stood abruptly, his golden eyes flashing with barely controlled outrage. Chancellor, with all respect, pairing noble bloodlines with general admission students contradicts 2,000 years of academy tradition. Vex's ancient gaze settled on the protesting student, and the temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Tradition, Mr. Barthor, exists to serve our evolution, not constrain it. The Demon King himself established this academy to develop extraordinary potential, regardless of origin. His withered hand gestured toward the display. If you find your assignment unsatisfactory, you are welcome to seek education elsewhere. The rebuke, delivered with quiet finality, left no room for further protest. Cress resumed his seat, fury evident in his rigid posture. Naruto's attention had already shifted to the display, where his name pulsed with unusual brightness bees. I'd an unexpected partner assignment, Sasha Necron. Across the chamber, Sasha's composed expression fractured into momentary shock before hardening into resolute displeasure. Her gaze snapped toward Naruto with undisguised suspicion. Then toward her sister, whose name appeared paired with Elaine Ars Magna, a student unknown to Naruto. The Chancellor continued, apparently oblivious to the shock rippling through the assembly. Additionally, select students will participate in specialized research initiatives previously reserved for advanced years. Another display materialized, showing smaller groups arranged for academic rather than combat focus. The first expedition departs tomorrow for the northern ruins, where recent tectonic activity has exposed previously inaccessible chambers. As the announcements concluded and students were dismissed to locate their assigned partners, Naruto remained seated, watching the controlled chaos with detached amusement. The Academy's careful social structure had been deliberately disrupted, a development that suggested faculty awareness of something beyond normal educational concerns. You appear unsurprised by these changes, came a quiet voice beside him. Misha Necron had approached without his notice, a feat that should have been impossible given his heightened senses. Naruto tilted his head, studying her with renewed interest. You move like someone accustomed to navigating unnoticed. And you notice like someone accustomed to being hunted, she countered smoothly. My sister awaits you in Training Complex 7. I suggest not keeping her waiting. Her patience with this arrangement is already severely limited. And what about your arrangement? Naruto asked, rising from his seat with fluid grace. You seem to have drawn an interesting partner yourself. Something flickered behind Misha's crimson eyes, caution, perhaps, or calculation. Elaine specializes in temporal anomalies. An appropriate match for someone researching historical discontinuities. Historical discontinuities, Naruto repeated, amusement coloring his tone. Is that what I am in your assessment? Misha's expression remained perfectly neutral. You are many things, Naruto Uzumaki. A discontinuity is merely the most academically appropriate classification. She turned to leave, then paused. A word of advice regarding my sister, she respects ability above all else. Demonstrate why the Chancellor paired you, and her cooperation will follow. Before Naruto could respond, Misha had vanished into the dispersing crowd with uncanny efficiency. He shook his head slightly, a genuine smile touching his lips for the first time since arriving at the academy. The Necron sisters were proving far more interesting than anticipated. Training Complex S even resembled a fortress more than an educational facility. Its hexagonal architecture featured reinforced walls inscribed with containment runes and a ceiling that could retract to open directly to the sky. Unlike the ornate decoration that characterized most academy buildings, the training complex embraced austere functionality. The focus here was combat proficiency, not aesthetic appreciation. Sasha Necron stood at the center of the massive chamber, her silver blade drawn and glowing with barely restrained energy. She had exchanged her formal uniform for training attire, form-fitting armor that combined traditional styling with practical protection. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe style that emphasized her sharp features and uncompromising amber eyes. She acknowledged Naruto's arrival with a curt nod. "You're late." "Am I?" he replied, glancing around the empty chamber. "Seems like I'm exactly on time for whatever this is." Sasha's expression tightened fractionally. "This is an evaluation session. Before we begin mandatory partnered training, I need to assess your capabilities under controlled conditions. You watched me during the trials yesterday," Naruto pointed out, making no move to prepare for combat. He remained in his customized uniform, hands tucked casually in his pockets. "Wasn't that assessment enough? The trials demonstrated raw power and basiconded." Her tone clipped and professional. "They revealed nothing about your tactical decision-making, adaptation to unexpected scenarios, or ability to coordinate with a partner." Naruto studied her with newfound interest. Despite her evident displeasure with their pairing, Sasha approached the situation with pragmatic thoroughness rather than emotional rejection. "Fair point," he conceded. "How do you want to do this?" "3 scenarios," she explained, sheathing her sword with practiced precision. "First, defensive coordination. Can you adapt your style to complement mine when facing multiple opponents? Second, offensive synergy. Can we combine our techniques effectively against hardened targets? Third, tactical flexibility. How well do you adjust to changing battlefield conditions?" As she spoke, she activated a control panel embedded in her wrist guard. The chamber responded immediately, floor plates shifting to create variable terrain while crystalline constructs materialized arrow. The perimeter, training golems programmed to simulate various combat scenarios. "These constructs are calibrated to my combat data," Sasha explained, drawing her blade once more. "They will recognize my techniques and adapt accordingly. You represent an unknown variable, which provides realistic battle conditions." Naruto finally removed his hands from his pockets, rolling his shoulders as if preparing for light exercise. "So I just need to fight alongside you without getting in your way." Sounds simple enough. Sasha's eyes narrowed slightly. "This isn't about not getting in the way. Effective partnerships require complementary action, anticipating your allies' movements, creating openings they can exploit, covering vulnerabilities they expose while attacking. If the Chancellor's pairing has merit, our combat styles should have natural synergy despite our different techniques." She gestured sharply, and the training golems activated simultaneously, their crystalline forms glowing with combat programming. Defensive scenario initiating. 6 opponents, surroundment pattern. Objective: maintain position while neutralizing threats. The golems moved with uncanny coordination, encircling them in a tightening formation. Each construct wielded different weapons: sword, staff, chain, axe, bow, and weighted net, representing varied threat types requiring different defensive responses. Sasha assumed a classical guard position, her blade held at middle height with perfect balance. "Ready position," she instructed, clearly expecting Naruto to adopt a complementary stance. Instead, he yawned slightly and remained relaxed. "I'll follow your lead," he offered, making no move to prepare formal defenses. Irritation flashed across Sasha's features, but professionalism prevailed. Engagement in 3, 2, 1. The constructs attacked with synchronized precision, each targeting a different angle of approach. Sasha moved with practiced efficiency, her blade blurring as she countered the sword-wielding golem while sidestepping the axe-bearer's overhead strike. Her technique represented classical demon swordsmanship refined to its highest expression: economical movements, perfect footwork, and precisely calculated energy expenditure. Naruto, despite his casual demeanor, moved with equally impressive coordination. Rather than adopting formal combat techniques, he seemed to flow around attacks with minimal movement, often redirecting the construct's momentum rather than directly blocking. Where Sasha's style projected disciplined power, Naruto's approach suggested effortless adaptability. The net-wielding golem launched its weapon toward Naruto's apparently unguarded back while he was occupied with the staff-bearer. Without looking, he shifted slightly to the left, causing the net to miss him by millimeters before entangling the chain-wielding construct that had been circling for position. 3 o'clock, overhead, he called casually to Sasha, who instant L. Y pivoted to block the axe-bearer's attack without questioning the warning. Her counter-strike shattered the construct's weapon arm, temporarily removing it from the combat equation. As the engagement continued, an unexpected pattern emerged. Despite their contrasting styles, Naruto and Sasha maintained perfect spatial awareness of each other's positions. They moved in complementary patterns without verbal coordination, creating a defensive formation that maximized their respective strengths. Sasha's disciplined technique established firm boundaries that opponent couldn't penetrate, while Naruto's fluid adaptability eliminated threats that attempted to exploit openings during her offensive sequences. When the last construct had been neutralized, Sasha paused to reassess her training partner. Perspiration beaded lightly on her brow from the intense exercise, but Naruto appeared completely unaffected, his breathing as even as if he'd been taking a casual stroll. Adequate basic coordination, she acknowledged, though her tone suggested greater impression than her words conveyed. Let's proceed to offensive synergy. The chamber reconfigured, terrain shifting to create an elevated central platform surrounded by defensive barriers. A massive golem materialized at the center, nearly 3 meters tall, its crystalline form reinforced with overlapping energy shields designed to withstand concentrated attacks. Offensive scenario, Sasha announced. Hardened target with multi-layered defenses. Objective: penetrate shields and neutralize central core within 3 minutes. Naruto studied the imposing construct with mild interest. Those shields look pretty solid. What's your usual approach? Sequential overload, Sasha replied, her blade beginning to glow with accumulated energy. I can disrupt 2, possibly 3 layers with concentrated strikes, but complete penetration requires coordinated attacks from multiple angles. Naruto nodded thoughtfully. Makes sense. Mind if I try something slightly different? Quote. Sasha frowned slightly. What do you propose? Instead of answering directly, Naruto held out his hand. May I see your sword for a moment? Her expression shifted to outright suspicion. My blade is a royal artifact passed through generations of the Necron line. It is not casually handed to strangers. Fair enough, Naruto conceded easily. Then I'll work with what I have. He held out his right hand, palm upward, and concentrated briefly. Energy began to coalesce above his palm. Not the usual demonic power that characterized academy techniques, but something bluer, denser, more primal. Sasha's eyes widened as the energy compressed and rotated, forming a perfect sphere that contained what appeared to be miniature whirlpool currents. That's not standard energy manipulation, she observed, professional interest temporarily overriding suspicion. No, Naruto agreed, studying the swirling sphere with casual familiarity. It's something I developed a long time ago. The technique compresses energy while maintaining rotational force in multiple directions simultaneously. Impossible, Sasha stated flatly. Opposing force vectors would cancel each other out. Naruto's smile contained centuries of secrets. Only if you're limited to conventional dimensional physics. Shall we test it against those shields? The countdown timer began flashing, indicating their 3-minute window had started. Sasha nodded sharply, setting aside theoretical objections in favor of practical results. I'll create an opening in the outer defenses, she decided, assuming an offensive stance. Your technique appears concentrated enough to exploit a momentary disruption if timed correctly. Without waiting for confirmation, she launched herself toward the massive construct. Her blade trailing silver energy as she executed a complex attack sequence. Her sword struck with precision, each blow targeting specific nodes in the shield matrix. The construct responded with counterattacks that Sasha evaded with practiced efficiency, maintaining continuous offensive pressure while avoiding return strikes, Naruto observed with analytical intensity, his casual demeanor temporarily replaced by focused assessment. Sasha's technique was impressive, far more advanced than would be expected even from a royal descendant. Her movements contained elements of ancient sword forms that had supposedly been lost centuries ago. When her blade struck a particular junction in the shield matrix, causing a momentary fluctuation in the entire defensive system, Naruto moved. One instant he stood observing from a distance, the next he appeared directly before the construct, the swirling energy sphere in his palm expanded to twice its original size. Now, he stated simply, driving the technique into the fluctuating shield point. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The sphere seemed to freeze in place against the barrier. Then reality itself appeared to distort around the point of impact. The shield didn't merely break, it folded inward, as if space itself were being compressed. Concentric rings of energy rippled outward from the impact point, systematical, collapsing each defensive layer from the inside out. The construct's core was exposed for less than a second before Naruto's technique reached it. The resulting implosion was so perfectly contained that it generated almost no external effect. The massive golem simply ceased to exist, its component energy absorbed and neutralized within the spiraling technique. Silence fell across the training chamber as the countdown timer froze at 2 minutes and 17 seconds remaining. Sasha stared at the empty platform where the construct had stood, her composed expression giving way to genuine shock. "That's not possible," she whispered, her academic understanding fundamentally challenged by what she had witnessed. "You altered dimensional constants within a localized field." Naruto allowed the last traces of his technique to dissipate from his palm. "Is that a problem?" "It's not a question of problem," she replied, sheathing her sword with less than her usual precision. "It's a question of fundamental magical theory. What you just did violates 7 established principles of energy manipulation. It shouldn't be possible without ritual support and multiple high-level practitioners." Naruto shrugged, his casual demeanor returning. "Sometimes the established principles need revision. Your technique was impressive too, especially that double reverse cut sequence. Haven't seen that style executed properly in centuries." Quote. Sasha's eyes narrowed at his phrasing. "In centuries. A figure of speech," he replied easily. "It's an ancient form, isn't it? Preserved in your family line." Before she could pursue this slip, the chamber's alert system activated, bathing the training complex in pulsing crimson light. A disembodied voice echoed through the space. "All students return to residential quarters immediately. Security protocols Alpha 7 now in effect. This is not a drill. Repeat. All students return to residential quarters immediately." Sasha's attention immediately shifted to the emergency. Personal concerns set aside in favor of duty. "Alpha 7 indicates perimeter breach by hostile entities," she explained tersely, already moving toward the exit. "The academy is under attack. The central courtyard had transformed from orderly educational space to chaotic battleground in less than 10 minutes. Faculty members formed defensive perimeters around student evacuation routes, their combined magic generating shield barriers that strained against external pressure. Beyond these protective boundaries, shadowy entities prowled, humanoid figures composed of shifting darkness, their forms occasionally solidifying enough to reveal obsidian armor similar to what Vazrith had worn during his intrusion into the Necron quarters. Sasha assessed the situation with professional detachment as she and Naruto navigated interior corridors toward the royal residence tower. "Shadow walkers," she identified grimly. Interdimensional entities typically constrained by the barrier seals. Their presence suggests significant boundary degradation. Or deliberate summoning, Naruto suggested, his gaze tracking patterns in the attacker's movements that suggested coordinated purpose rather than random incursion. Sasha glanced at him sharply. Summoning shadow walkers would require forbidden ritual knowledge and astronomical magical resources. No one in the academy could accomplish it undetected. "No one currently in the academy," Naruto clarified, his normally casual expression replaced by focused calculation. "But your security protocols focus primarily on preventing exit rather than entry, don't they?" Before Sasha could respond, an explosion rocked the western quadrant of the campus. The magical barriers there visibly flickered, allowing several shadow entities to slip through before faculty members could reinforce the weakened section. "We need to reach the tower," Sasha stated, changing direction to avoid the compromised area. "Royal Ensis contain emergency response equipment and direct communication links to territorial defense forces." Naruto followed her lead through the labyrinthine corridors, though his attention seemed dead between their immediate surroundings and some distant awareness. "Your sister," he said suddenly. "Where would she be during an emergency lockdown?" "Misha follows protocols precisely," Sasha replied, though uncertainty flickered across her features. "She should be proceeding to the tower as we are." "But you don't think she is," Naruto observed, reading her expression with uncanny accuracy. Sasha's pace faltered momentarily. "The historical archives are on the path between the research complex and our tower. If she was with her assigned partner when the alert sounded, she might ha. They decided that certain knowledge was worth securing before evacuation. Naruto finished for her. Especially if that knowledge related to current events. Determination hardened Sasha's features. We need to detour to the archives. She activated her communication bracelet, attempting to establish contact with her sister. Static answered her, suggesting magical interference with standard communication channels. Communications are being deliberately jammed, she realized, her concern visibly increasing. This isn't a random incursion, it's a coordinated attack with specific objectives. The Y altered course toward the massive structure that housed the Academy's historical records, a building more fortress than library, its architecture designed to protect millennia of accumulated knowledge through any catastrophe. As they approached, the sounds of combat became audible, magical discharge and the distinctive resonance of defensive barriers under assault. Sasha drew her blade as they rounded the final corner, then froze at the scene before them. The archive's massive entry doors had been breached, their enchanted metal crumpled inward as if struck by enormous force. Within the shattered entrance, 3 figures were engaged in desperate combat against a swarm of shadow entities. Misha Necron stood at the center, her normally reserved demeanor transformed into cold combat efficiency. Her hands wove complex patterns that manipulated gravity and spatial dimensions around the attacking shadows, crushing or displacing them with calculated precision. Beside her fought a tall, pale woman with silver-white hair that floated around her head as if underwater, her movements leaving trailing afterimages as she seemed to exist in multiple positions simultaneously. Elaine, Sasha identified her sister's assigned partner, already moving to join the defense. The third defender was unexpected. A young woman with raven black hair adorned with ritual beads and talismans, wielding Wa. Ti appeared to be a ceremonial mirror that reflected the shadow entities back upon themselves, transforming attackers into dissipating mist whenever its surface captured their image. Naruto assessed the tactical situation in an instant. They're defending something specific, he noted, indicating how THNED positioned before an inner doorway rather than retreating to more defensible ground. Something in that chamber behind them. The restricted archives, Sasha confirmed, her blade beginning to glow with accumulated energy. Only faculty and specially authorized researchers have access. Whatever the attackers want must be stored there. Without further discussion, they launched themselves into the fray. Sasha's entry was announced by a blade technique that released a crescent wave of silver energy, cleaving through multiple shadow entities before they could register the new threat. Naruto moved with less dramatic effect but equal lethality. Each shadow he engaged simply ceased to exist, their essence seemingly absorbed by his passing contact. Sasha. Misha acknowledged her sister's arrival without shifting her focus from the complex magical pattern she was maintaining. They Brea. Shed containment 12 minutes ago, targeted strike directly through outer defenses. What are they after? Sasha demanded, her blade forming a defensive perimeter around the group as she systematic. Ally eliminated shadows that penetrated their position. The concordance scrolls, replied the black-haired woman with the mirror, her voice carrying musical undertones despite the combat situation. They knew exactly where to find them and how to disrupt the specific wards protecting that section. Inside job, Elaine added, her voice strangely distorted as if reaching them from multiple temporal positions simultaneously. Someone provided layout and security details. We intercepted them before they could extract the scrolls, but reinforcements keep arriving through shadow gates. Naruto moved to the shattered entrance, studying the courtyard beyond where additional shadow entities were coalescing from pools of darkness. They're being summoned through conditional gates, he observed. The anchor point must be nearby, probably inside the academy grounds. The summoner would need tremendous power to maintain multiple gates, Misha noted, her analytical mind working despite the crisis. An intimate knowledge of the Academy's defensive systems to avoid detection. Our faculty access, Naruto suggested, his gaze shifting toward the administrative complex visible across the courtyard. Sasha followed his line of thought immediately. You believe a professor is responsible? Someone with authority, certainly. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he tracked energy patterns visible only to him. The incursion is too precisely targeted, too well informed about vulnerabilities. The black-haired woman with the mirror turned toward him, her eyes widening with recognition. You, she whispered, momentarily lowering her defensive implement. The Azure won. The prophecy said you would return when the barriers weakened. Focus, Kagami, Elaine snapped, her form blurring as she intercepted a shadow that nearly reached the distracted woman. Mystical revelations can wait until we're not surrounded by interdimensional assassins. Naruto assessed their tactical situation with practiced efficiency. They were gradually being overwhelmed through sheer numbers, their defensive position becoming increasingly untenable as fatigue affected the spellcasters' precision. A strategic withdrawal might be possible, but would surrender the scrolls the attackers sought. We need to eliminate the summoning source, he decided, his casual demeanor replaced by commanding presence that seemed to expand beyond his physical form. Sasha, maintain perimeter defense with Elaine. Misha, adapt your gravity manipulation to create a repulsion field around this position, bias 10 minutes. Kagami, your mirror can disrupt shadow essence, correct? The black-haired woman nodded, surprise evident at his knowledge of her implement's capabilities. Then you're with me, Naruto continued. We're going to track the summoning pattern to its source and shut it down. That's suicide, Sasha objected, though she adjusted her position to better defend the entrance as suggested. You'd be moving directly through the highest concentration of shadow entities. Trust me, Naruto replied, his blue eyes meeting hers with calm certainty. I've dealt with shadow walkers before. Something in his tone, absolute confidence born of experience rather than bravado, gave Sasha pause. After a heartbeat of consideration, she nodded sharply. 10 minutes. If you haven't neutralized the source by then, implement emergency evacuation protocols. More than enough time, Naruto assured her, turning to Kagami. Ready. The mirror wielder straightened, determination replacing her earlier shock. I was born ready, Azure won. The Shinano bloodline has awaited your return for generations. Without further discussion, they moved toward the shattered entrance, Naruto leading with Kagami close behind. As they stepped into the shadow-filled courtyard, Naruto's demeanor subtly shifted. The casual student facade fell away completely, replaced by something ancient and terrible. His movements became preternaturally fluid, his presence expanding until the very shadows seemed to recoil from his approach. Kagami matched his pace, her mirror raised to reflect any entity that came too close. Between Naruto's presence and her artifact's power, they carved a path through the seething darkness toward the administrative complex where the summoning energies originated. Inside the archive entrance, Ms. Ha watched their departure with analytical intensity. He's not concealing himself anymore, she observed quietly. That's his true nature emerging. What do you mean? Sasha demanded, her blade cleaving another shadow that ventured too close. Watch how the shadows react to him, Misha replied. Not just fear, recognition. They know what he is. Across the courtyard, Naruto and Kagami had reached the administrative building. Rather than using the formal entrance, Naruto placed his palm against a seemingly solid wall. The structure rippled like disturbed water, opening a passage that should have existed according to conventional architectural understanding. He just rewrote the building's structural parameters, Elaine noted, her temporally distorted voice conveying impressed surprise. That's beyond advanced manipulation. That's fundamental reality adjustment. Who is he? Sasha whispered, momentary awe overriding her disciplined focus. I think, Misha replied carefully, we're about to find out. The administrative complex's interior had been transformed into a ritual chamber. Office walls had been removed to create a single massive space dominated by a summoning circle of staggering complexity. Obsidian pillars stood at precise intervals around the perimeter, each crowned with a crystalline focus that channeled energy into the central pattern where Shadow Gat's continuously disgorged additional entities. At the circle's center stood High Chancellor Vex, his withered form now wreathed in violently fluctuating energy that bore little resemblance to standard demonic magic. Beside him, 3 hooded figures maintained secondary casting positions, their combined power feeding the massive ritual. Chancellor, Kagami whispered in shock as they observed the concealed entrance Naruto had created. He's responsible for the attack. Not exactly, Naruto replied, his eyes tracking energy patterns invisible to conventional perception. Look at the discoloration in his aura. The Chancellor is being controlled, his body and position utilized while his consciousness is suppressed. Possession. Kagami suggested, adjusting her mirror to capture different visual spectra. But no demon possesses that capability against someone of his rank and protection. No current demon, Naruto corrected quietly. But there are older things stirring as the bar. Rears weaken, things that remember techniques from the first age. Before Kagami could question this statement, Naruto placed a hand on her shoulder. I need you to create a reflection cascade with your mirror. Can you capture and multiply a specific inherit the chamber? Kagami nodded, though uncertainty flickered across her features. Theoretically, yes, but the power requirements would be. I'll provide the power. Naruto interrupted, his hand beginning to glow with that strange blue energy that differed from conventional magic. You provide the technique. When I give the signal, target T. He central focus crystal and channel everything I send through your mirror. Recognition dawned in Kagami's eyes. You're going to overload the summoning matrix. But the backlash could kill everyone. In the building, including the Chancellor. Trust me, Naruto replied, his expression revealing nothing of his thoughts. I've collapsed dimensional gates before. Before she could question this extraordinary claim, Naruto stepped directly into the ritual chamber, his presence immediately drawing attention from the hooded figures. They turned as one, abandoning their casting positions to intercept the intruder. Containment breach, one announced in a voice that resonated with unnatural harmonics. Primary target located, initiating capture protocol. Sorry to disappoint, Naruto replied, his casual tone belied by the sudden oppressive weight of his presence. But I'm not in a cooperative mood today. The three figures launched simultaneous attacks, not shadow manipulation as their summoned entities used, but something older and more fundamental. Reality itself seemed to crack around Naruto as they attempted to shatter the dimensional stability that maintained his physical form. Naruto responded not with conventional defense but with a counterattack so subtle it was nearly imperceptible. He simply adjusted his existence to a slightly different frequency of reality, shifting Zhu T enough that their techniques passed through his position without finding purchase, like weapons swung through mist. That's not possible, one hooded figure hissed, adjusting their attack pattern. No incarnate being can phase shift without anchor points. I'm something of an exception, Naruto replied, suddenly directly behind the speaker despite having made no visible movement. His palm pressed against the figure's back, and cascading blue energy enveloped the attacker. The hooded form convulsed once before collapsing, its animating essence disrupted at a fundamental level. The remaining attackers adapted immediately, abandoning direct confrontation to retreat toward the summoning circle. Accelerate extraction, one commanded, gestures weaving complex patterns that caused the shad owl gates to pulse with increased activity. Priority target confirmed. The Azure Destroyer walks incarnate. At the circle's center, Chancellor Vex's possessed form turned toward Naruto, eyes glowing with malevolent awareness that didn't belong to the Academy leader. So the rumors were true, the entity controlling Vex stated, its voice overlaying the Chancellor's natural tones with something ancient and cold. The god of destruction reduced to playing student among lesser beings. How remarkably pathetic. And you are? Naruto inquired, seemingly unbothered by the entity's knowledge of his nature. A harbinger of what comes. The entity replied through Vex's mouth. The old barriers fail. The silver sea destabilizes. All you sought to contain breaks free, god of destruction. Your age ends as we return. Ambitious claim, Naruto commented, continuing his casual approach despite the increasing magical turbulence surrounding the summoning circle. But I've heard similar speeches before. They rarely end well for the speaker. The entity laughed, a sound that caused blood to seep from the Chancellor's eyes and ears as his mortal form struggled to channel energies it was never designed to contain. You lack your former power, Destroyer. The seals you placed upon yourself remain intact. You are shadow of what once reshaped cosmos. True, Naruto acknowledged, now standing at the edge of the active summoning circle. But I've always been resourceful. He glanced toward the concealed entrance where Kagami waited with her mirror. Now, Kagami stepped into view, her ceremonial mirror raised before her. Its surface caught the ambient light of the summoning ritual and began to transform it, multiplying, refracting, and redirecting the energy patterns in accelerating cascades. As Naruto had promised, power flowed from him into her artifact, causing its reflective surface to expand beyond physical limitations until it seemed to encompass the entire chamber. Interference pattern detected. One hooded figure warned, attempting to counter the disruption. Stabilize the matrix. But Naruto had already placed his hands directly on the summoning circle's outer ring. Blue energy, not the violent, destructive force one might expect from a deity of destruction, but something controlled and precise, flowed from his palms into the ritual framework. Rather than attacking the shadow gates directly, he began systematically altering the underlying mathematical principles that governed their operation. "What are you doing?" the entity controlling Vex demanded, genuine alarm replacing its previous confidence. "Stop. Adjusting variables," Naruto replied calmly, azure symbols appearing in the air around him, complex equations and dimensional constants rearranging themselves under his direction. Conversion rather than destruction. More elegant, don't you think? The summoning circle's violent energy gradually shifted hue, transforming from sickly violet to brilliant azure as Naruto's alterations propagated throughout the system. The shadow gates began to invert, their dimensional orientation reversing to pull summoned entities back through rather than allowing more to emerge. "Impossible," one hooded figure gasped, attempting to sever their connection to the ritual. "He's rewriting fundamental principles mid-operation." "Not impossible," Kagami corrected, her mirror now pulsing in perfect harmony with Naruto's modifications. "Merely divine." The controlled reversal accelerated. Shadow entities throughout the academy grounds suddenly pulled toward the administrative complex as their anchoring principles inverted. Within moments, the courtyard cleared of attacking forces, all interdimensional intruders drawn inexorably back through the collapsing gates. At the circle's center, Vex's possessed form struggled against the energetic reversal. "This changes nothing, Destroyer," the entity snarled through bleeding lips. "The awakening comes. What sleeps beneath the silver sea stirs. Your creation becomes your undoing." "Perhaps," Naruto acknowledged, completing his systematic adjustments. "But not today." With a final gesture, he closed the modified equation. The summoning circle flared with blinding intensity before collapsing inward, taking with it the remaining hooded figures and the entity possessing the Chancellor. Vex's body crumpled to the floor, released from the foreign consciousness that had controlled it. Silence fell across the chamber as the last echoes of dimensional energy dissipated. Naruto knelt beside the Chancellor's unconscious form, checking vital signs with experienced precision. "He'll survive," he announced to Kagami, who had lowered her mirror with evident exhaustion. The possession damaged his energy pathways, but his body's natural regeneration should repair the worst effects. "How did you know to convert the summoning matrix rather than simply destroying it?" Kagami asked, genuine curiosity overriding her fatigue. "Conventional wisdom holds that shadow gates must be forcibly collapsed." Naruto smiled. Not his usual casual expression, but something older and tinged with memories beyond mortal reckoning. "Conventional wisdom is based on limited understanding. Shadow entities aren't inherently hostile, they're simply extradimensional consciousness seeking stable manifestation. Redirecting the IR essence back to appropriate dimensional frequencies is more effective than raw destruction. As one would expect the creator of the Silver Sea to know," Kagami observed quietly. Naruto's gaze shareth renewed interest. "Your family maintains interesting traditions, Kagami Shinano. The Shinano line has served as spiritual mediators since the First Age," she replied simply. "We remember what others choose to forget." Before Naruto could respond, rapid footsteps approached from the courtyard. Sasha and Misha Necron entered the chamber, weapons ready, expressions shifting to shock as they surveyed the aftermath of what had clearly been a major magical confrontation. "The shadow entities have vanished," Sasha reported, her professional demeanor reasserting itself despite her evident surprise at the chamber's condition. "All of them, simultaneously." Misha moved directly to the collapsed summoning circle, her analytical gaze tracking residual energy patterns. "Dimensional inversion," she identified with quiet precision. The entire summoning matrix was mathematically reversed to pull the entities back through their origin points. Her crimson eyes lifted to Naruto. Theoretical texts describe such techniques, but no recorded mage has successfully implemented them. Chancellor Vex requires medical attention, Naruto deflected, gesturing toward the unconscious administrator. He was being controlled by an external entity with considerable power. Sasha immediately activated her communication bracelet, which now functioned normally with the jamming effect eliminated. Quote, Medical emergency in the administrative complex, she reported. Chancellor down, condition stable but critical. As Academy security forces and medical personnel began arriving, Naruto gradually ed toward the back of the gathering crowd. His participation had been too visible to completely deny, but the fewer questions asked about his specific techniques, the better. Kagami appeared beside him, her mirror now concealed within ornate wrappings. You're leaving before the official inquiry begins, she observed, no question in her tone. Seems prudent, Naruto acknowledged. Detailed explanations would raise more questions than they'd answer at this point. They'll want to know how you neutralized a Class 5 interdimensional incursion without faculty assistance, Kagami noted, her dark eyes reflecting understanding beyond her apparent years. And why entities from beyond the barrier would identify you as the Azure Destroyer. Naruto's expression revealed nothing of his thoughts. Sometimes mysteries serve better than explanations. The Academy has more immediate concerns than my unconventional techniques. Kagami nodded slightly. The Shinano Shrine maintains private archives regarding the Azure cycle. When you're ready to remember what you've chosen to forget, seek me there. She pressed a small talisman into his palm, a simple wooden disc inscribed with spiraling TTERNS that matched those occasionally visible beneath his skin. This will guide you when the time comes. Before he could respond, she merged into the growing crowd of officials, her distinctive IR ornaments vanishing among uniformed Academy personnel. Naruto studied the talisman briefly before tucking it away in an inner pocket. The patterns it contained resonated with something deep within. His sealed memories, fragments of knowledge from before his self-imposed amnesia, echoes of his true nature straining against the bindings he had placed upon himself. As he slipped away from the administrative complex, his gaze lifted toward the distant horizon where storm clouds continued to gather despite the threat's apparent neutralization. Something fundamental had shifted today, the careful balance he had maintained since arriving at the Academy was beginning to falter, fragments of his true nature emerging in response to escalating threats. The question remained, was he prepared to remember what he had deliberately forgotten? And more importantly, was this world prepared for the return of the god of destruction? The aftermath of the shadow incursion transformed the Academy. Security protocols were enhanced, additional faculty assigned to perimeter monitoring, and student movements restricted to essential educational activities. Official statements described the event as an interdimensional anomaly, rather than a deliberate attack, with no mention of the Chancellor's possession or the targeted nature of the assault on the archives. 3 days after the incident, Naruto found himself summoned to a debriefing session with the Interim Administration Council, senior faculty members who had assumed leadership during Chancellor Vex's recovery. The meeting took place not in the formal administrative offices but in a secure chamber beneath the archives, a location that suggested concern about both privacy and containment. Professor Emeria, now serving as acting chancellor, presided over the gathering. Beside her sat 5 senior faculty members, their expressions ranging from clinical curiosity to poorly concealed hostility. The chamber's design, a perfect circle WITH 7 equidistant pillars supporting a dome ceiling inscribed with containment runes, suggested it had been created for evaluating potentially dangerous magical phenomena. Mr. Uzumaki, Emeria began without preamble. Your actions during the recent security incident have raised several significant questions regarding your background and capabilities. Naruto maintained his casual posture despite the formally adversarial setting. Happy to help clear things up, he offered with a relaxed smile that did nothing to soften the tension in the chamber. Multiple witnesses report you demonstrating techniques that exceed advanced curriculum parameters, Emeria continued, consulting a crystalline tablet that displayed scrolling text. Specifically, dimensional phase shifting, ritual matrix reconfiguration, and entity essence disruption. None of these capabilities appear in your registration documents. My registration was processed rather quickly, Naruto pointed out reasonably. Probably some oversights in the paperwork. A silver-haired professor leaned forward, his hawkish features tight with suspicion. No academy admissions oversight could account for abilities typically restricted to magister-rank practitioners with centuries of specialized study. I'm a quick learner, Naruto replied with the same unflappable calm. Professor Emeria's patience visibly thinned. Mr. Uzumaki. This council is attempting to understand how a first-year transfer student neutralized a threat that would have challenged our most experienced faculty. Continued evasion suggests you have something significant to hide. Naruto studied the assembled faculty for a moment, weighing options and potential consequences. What happened to the concordance scrolls? He finally asked, changing direction unexpectedly. The council members exchanged surprised glances at this apparent non sequitur. Emeria recovered first. The archived materials remain secure. Their status is not relevant to this inquiry. Actually, it's entirely relevant, Naruto countered, his casual demeanor unchanged but something sharper emerging in his gaze. The shadow entities specifically targeted those scrolls. Understanding why might explain their unusual interest in me as well. A subtle shift occurred in the chamber's atmosphere as council members recognized the implicit connection he was drawing. Emeria's expression tightened with calculation. The concordance scrolls contain historical records from the First Age, she acknowledged carefully. Specifically, accounts of the Covenant established Betwi, and the original demon territories and certain external powers. External powers, Naruto repeated, amusement coloring his tone. An interesting euphemism for divine entities who established the dimensional barriers you still maintain. Silence fell across the chamber as the implications of his statement registered. It was the silver-haired professor who finally responded, his voice carrying ceremonial formality. You claim knowledge of the First Covenant, of the God Pact that established our world's boundaries. I claim nothing, Naruto replied Evi that entities capable of interdimency. Onal Shadow Walking showed specific interest in both those historical records and myself. Drawing connections seems reasonable. The entities identified you as Azure Destroyer, Emeria noted, watching his reaction carefully. A title associated with certain apocalyptic prophecies regarding the dissolution of dimensional barriers. Prophecies are notoriously unreliable, Naruto commented, echoing his earlier statement to Misha. Especially when translated across multiple epochs and cultural contexts. Yet the timing remains concerning, another council member observed. Your arrival COI. Sides with unprecedented barrier instability, followed immediately by the first significant shadow incursion in over a millennium. Correlation isn't causation, Naruto pointed out reasonably. Perhaps I was drawn here because of the instability, rather than causing it. Professor Emeria set aside her tablet, fixing Naruto with a direct gaze that contained both authority and calculation. Mr. Uzumaki, let us be frank. This council has two primary concerns: the security of our institution and the safety of our students. Your capabilities clearly exceed normal parameters, yet your origins remain suspiciously obscure. We require some explanation that allows us to assess potential risks associated with your continued presence. Naruto considered his response carefully. Total honesty would create more problems than it solved. Yet continued evasion would only intensify suspicion. A partial truth might serve better than either extreme. I possess certain inherited abilities related to interdimensional mechanics. He finally offered. My family line specialized in barrier maintenance and entity containment for many generations. The techniques you witnessed represent specialized applications of that knowledge. No recognized demon bloodline possesses such capabilities, the silver-haired professor objected. I never claimed demon ancestry, Naruto replied simply. This statement caused an immediate stir among the council members. Non-demonic entities were theoretically permitted to study at the academy under special dispensation, but such cases were vanishingly rare and subject to extensive security protocols. You passed through demonic identification wards without triggering alerts, Emeria noted, her professional composure maintaining despite evident surprise. Quote, the wards identify hostile intent and incompatible energy signatures, Naruto corrected. My presence satisfies neither condition. The council members conferred briefly in hushed tones before Emeria addressed him again. Your explanation, while incomplete, provides sufficient context for preliminary assessment. Given your demonstrated effectiveness against interdimensional threats, this council provisionally accepts your continued enrollment with additional monitoring protocols. Naruto inclined his head in acknowledgement. Reasonable precaution. Anything else? Yes, Emeria replied, her tone shifting to something more formal. Chancellor Vex, upon regaining consciousness, left specific instructions regarding your status. You were to be granted conditional access to the restricted archives, particularly materials relating to the First Covenant and dimensional barrier mechanics. This unexpected development drew surprised reactions from several council members, suggesting the Decis Ion had not been discussed with the full administrative body. The Chancellor believes your specialized knowledge may prove valuable in addressing current barrier instabilities, Emeria continued. Her personal reservations evident despite her professional delivery. Professor Thalric will coordinate your research access and monitor findings. The silver-haired professor who had expressed the most skepticism nodded stiffly, clearly unhappy with the assignment but unwilling to contradict the Chancellor's directive. One final matter, Emeria added as the meeting appeared to conclude. Why? Our training partnership with Sasha Necron will continue as assigned, but with additional faculty supervision during combat exercises. Your unconventional techniques require appropriate safety protocols. Naruto suppressed a smile at the bureaucratic understatement. Of course, safety first. As the council members filed out of the chamber, Professor Thalric remained behind, his hawkish face set in a mask of barely concealed hostility. Whatever you are, he stated quietly once they were alone, whatever game you're playing at this academy, know that you are watched. The Demon Kin G established protections against entities like you, protections that remain viable despite your apparent ability to circumvent standard wards. Entities like me? Naruto inquired, genuine curiosity in his tone. Divine remnants, Thalric clarified, his voice dropping to near whisper despite the chamber's privacy. Fragments of the old powers that seek to undermine the barriers. The Shadow Walk. RS called you Destroyer, for good reason, I suspect. Naruto's expression remained perfectly neutral. Interesting theory, Professor. Though destruction isn't always the negative force it's portrayed to be. Sometimes old structures must fall before new ones can rise. Save your philosophical justifications, Thalric snapped. I've studied the First Age records extensively. The god of Destructi On brought chaos and suffering before the Demon King established the current order. History written by the victors often omits crucial context, Naruto observed mildly. But I'm just a student eager to learn, Professor. I look forward to our research collaboration. With that parting comment, delivered with just enough irony to further irritate the suspicious academic, Naruto departed the chamber, leaving Thalric to his barely contained frustration. The royal residence tower's highest level contained a meditation garden rarely used by most students. Its carefully maintained ecosystem featured plants from all 7 demon territories arranged in harmonious patterns that promoted magical concentration and spiritual alignment. Crystal formations scattered throughout the garden captured and refracted light in constantly shifting patterns designed to stimulate higher cognitive functions. It was here that Naruto found Misha Necron 3 days after the administrative inquiry. She sat cross-legged on a smooth stone platform surrounded by phosphorescent flowers that responded to magical currents by changing colors. Her eyes were closed, her breathing measured, her hands forming a MP Lex mudra associated with advanced meditation techniques. Naruto observed her for several moments before speaking. Your concentration is impressive. Most practitioners can't maintain 7th position mudra for more than a few minutes. Misha opened her eyes slowly, crimson irises focusing on him with that same analytical intensity she always displayed. 2 hours and 17 minutes is my current record, she acknowledged, gradually releasing the position. Though true masters can maintain it for days. True masters often cheat with temporal dilation techniques, Naruto commented, settling on a nearby stone bench. Perception manipulation rather than genuine endurance. A hint of amusement touched Misha's usually reserved expression. Speaking from experience, Naruto smiled but didn't directly answer. I received access to the restricted archives today. Professor Thalric seems convinced I'll use the opportunity to undermine dimensional barriers and bring about apocalyptic catastrophe. Professor Thalric sees conspiracies in weather pattern fluctuations, Misha replied dismissively. His paranoia is exceeded only by his ambition. Nevertheless, research access provides opportunities, Naruto observed, particularly regarding certain historical inconsistencies that might interest you. Misha studied him with unblinking intensity. You're offering collaboration despite my sister's obvious suspicion and the faculty's increased monitoring of your activities. Knowledge benefits from Naruto replied simply. And you've already been investigating me through historical archives. Combining our research seems efficient. Direct acknowledgement, Misha noted with apparent approval. Refreshing compared to the usual political maneuvering at this academy. She rose from her meditation platform with fluid grace. What specific inconsistencies interest you most? The original barrier construction, Naruto answered immediately. Conventional history credits the Demon King exclusively. Yet mathematical analysis suggests multiple consciousness signatures in the fundamental equations. Misha's eyes widened slightly, the most dramatic emotional display Naruto had yet witnessed from her. You've analyzed the barrier equations directly. Those are sealed in the 7th vault, accessible only to the Chancellor and Council of Elders. Let's say I have inherited memories of the original formulations, Naruto suggested carefully. Fragmentary but sufficient for preliminary analysis. Misha absorbed this extraordinary claim with remarkable composure. The Azure Destroyer participated in creating the barriers he later sought to break, she stated, connecting implications with impressive speed. That contradicts the entire historical narrative of the First Age conflict. History is rarely as straightforward as its chroniclers prefer, Naruto noted, studying her reaction carefully. Especially when political considerations influence the official record. The Demon King as sole savior makes for simpler mythology than a collaborative effort involving the very power he supposedly defeated, Misha acknowledged, her analytical mind immediately grasping the political dimensions. Which raises the question, what truly happened during the sundering that ended the First Age? That, Naruto agreed with a hint of genuine eagerness, is exactly the question worth investigating. The restricted archives might contain accounts not included in sanitized historical texts. Misha considered his proposal, her expression revealing intense calculation. My research access through the Necron bloodline complements your newly granted permissions. Combined, we could access materials typically segregated even within the restricted sections. Precisely, Naruto confirmed, though discretion would be essential. Certain faculty members might consider such comprehensive investigation problematic, particularly if it challenges foundational narratives that justify current power structures, Misha added, demonstrating political awareness that belied her scholarly appearance. My sister would also object to this collaboration. She remains convinced you represent a potential threat, and you don't share her assessment. Naruto inquired, genuinely curious about her perspective. Misha considered the question with characteristic thoroughness. I believe you represent significant unknown variables, certainly. But threat implies hostile intent, which I've observed no evidence to support. Your interventions during the shadow incursion protected Academy resources and personnel at potential risk to yourself. A pragmatic analysis, Naruto acknowledged with appreciation. So, research partners, with conditions, Misha stipulated. Complete information sharing, joint analysis of all findings, and immediate disclosure of any relevant, inherited memories that might contextualize discoveries. Reasonable terms, Naruto agreed, extending his hand to formalize the arrangement. Misha regarded the offered hand with momentary hesitation before accepting it. As their palms met, a subtle energy transfer occurred, nothing dramatic or visible, but a momentary resonance between two consciousness patterns that recognized something familiar in each other. Interesting, Misha murmured, clearly sensing the phenomenon though not fully understanding its significance. Your energy signature contains harmonics I've only encountered in ancient artifacts from the First Age. A family trait, Naruto deflected smoothly, releasing her hand. When shall we begin our research? Tomorrow evening, Misha decided. The archives experience minimal faculty presence during evening meditation hours. I'll create a research authorization that grants us access to the cosmological history section. As they finalized arrangements, neither noticed the garden's crystal formations subtly shifting in response to their interaction, refracting light in patterns that briefly formed ancient symbols associated with prophecies of awakening and transformation. By the time they concluded their conversation and departed separately to avoid drawing attention to their new partnership, the crystalline anomalies had faded, leaving no evidence of the momentary dimensional resonance their agreement had triggered. Dreams had never been significant for Naruto, or rather, for the mortal identity he had constructed through careful self-sealing of his true nature. The persona he currently inhabited typically experienced dreamless sleep, a deliberate design choice to prevent his sealed memories from emerging through subconscious channels. That night, however, something changed. As Naruto drifted into sleep in his academy dormitory, the EFUL partitions he had established between his current consciousness and his sealed divine memories began to fluctuate. His interaction with Misha, combined with the shadow entity incursion and his of abilities beyond normal mortal capacity, had created resonance patterns that weakened his self-imposed constraints. The dream began with disorienting fragmentation, images, sensations, and DGE from multiple epochs blending and separating in chaotic sequence. Standing before a cosmic forge, fingers weaving reality itself into new configurations as galaxies formed and dissolved according to his will. A council chamber formed from crystallized thought, where beings of pure concept debated the nature and purpose of existence while stars burned through their life cycles in the time it took to complete a single exchange. The sensation of dividing his consciousness across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously, each fragment maintaining independent awareness while contributing to collective understanding. Watching civilizations rise and fall like waves upon a cosmic shore, their achievements and failures merely ripples in an eternal pattern of creation and dissolution. These abstract impressions gradually coalesced into more specific memories, chronologically closer to the events that had led to his current incarnation. A massive dimensional rupture threatening to collapse multiple reality streams into chaotic merger. His hands, glowing with azure power, methodically repairing breaches while another entity, familiar yet distinct, established new boundary parameters to prevent recurrence. Conflict with fellow divine entities over intervention principles, some arguing for strict non-interference with developing worlds, others advocating direct guidance. His own position favoring balanced approach through limited incarnation and subtle influence. The creation of the Silver Sea, a metaphysical buffer zone designed to preserve fragments of realities he was forced to destroy in his role as cosmic balancer. Not mere destruction but transformation, converting unstable dimensional configurations into suspended potential for future reconstitution. A betrayal among the Divine Council, sudden and devastating. Multiple consciousnesses he had trusted for eons combining their essence to bind and limit his nature, forcing him into shed form while they established a new cosmic order without his balancing influence. The dream shifted again, focusing now on more recent events in cosmic timescale. His decision to seal his own memories and powers, recognizing that direct confrontation in weakened state would fail. A strategic withdrawal into deliberate incarnation cycle, waiting for the inevitable deterioration of imperfect designed barriers established in his absence. Watching from the Silverround as the Demon King established dominion over 7 territories, creating an imperfect but functional order that stabilized dimensional boundaries temporarily. Recognition of potential partnership despite historical animosity. Collaboration disguised as conflict, working with the Demon King to create sustainable barriers while maintaining public narrative of opposition. The necessity of mythological simplification for beings who could not comprehend the true complexity of cosmic maintenance. The Demon King's eventual recognition of his own mortality, the establishment of legacy systems including the Academy to preserve crucial knowledge until the necessary rebalancing could occur. The final sequence, focused on immediate connections to his current situation. The Necron bloodline, specially positioned guardians carrying fragments of both his essence and the Demon King's, designed as potential catalysts for future reunification of seemingly opposed forces. Misha and Sasha, the latest generation of these specialized vessels, unaware of the cosmic patterns encoded in their very being. One attuned to knowledge and analysis, the other to protection and implementation. The growing instability in dimensional barriers, not random deterioration but orchestrated weakening by entities who had originally conspired to bind him. Now seeking access to the Silver Sea for purposes even darker than his aspect of destruction. His own awakening cycle, triggered by these external threats proceeding according to careful design. Gradual recovery of abilities and memories to prevent the catastrophic energy discharge that uncontrolled divine reemergence would cause. As dawn approached, the dream fragments began to recede, the self-sealing protocols reasserting control over his consciousness. But the information had been processed, integrated into his current awareness without full emotional and power implications that complete awakening would trigger. A calculated partial remembering that provided strategic context without premature transformation. Naruto awoke with the strange sensation of being simultaneously more and less than he had been before sleeping. The carefully constructed mortal identity remained dominant, but now contained expanded awareness of his true nature and purpose. Not full awakening, but a significant step toward reclaiming what he had deliberately forgotten. He sat up in his dormitory bed, palm raised before his face where intricate sealing patterns briefly became visible beneath his skin, complex arrays of his own design, created to contain and gradually release his true essence according to specific trigger conditions. Several had already deactivated following yesterday's events, others pulsed with increasing instability. Progressing faster than anticipated, he murmured to himself, studying the patterns with professional detachment. External interference or internal resonance. His thoughts turned to Misha Necron and their planned research collaboration. Her bloodline connection to these events was clearly no coincidence, though she herself remained unaware of her cosmic significance. Their interaction had triggered something within his sealing array, recognition patterns between complementary essences designed to find each other across incarnations. As morning light filtered through enchanted windows, Naruto made a decision. The gradual awakening would continue as designed, but with increased awareness of the larger pattern. Strategic adjustments would be necessary given the accelerated timeline, particularly regarding the Necron sisters and their unwitting role in cosmic rebalancing. The god of destruction would return, not as the mindless force of chaos depicted in simplified mythology, but as the necessary counterbalance to stagnation and corruption. Creation and destruction, preservation and transfer. Aspects of a single cosmic process that had fallen into dangerous imbalance during his absence. But first, he had a training session with Sasha Necron and research collaboration with Misha to attend. Divine cosmic restructuring would have to wait until after classes. With that remarkably pragmatic thought, Naruto rose to prepare for another day at the academy, his casual student demeanor settling back into place like a comfortable disguise. Behind his now slightly more ancient blue eyes, calculations of cosmic significance continued processing while he selected which uniform variation would most effectively irritate his combat training partner. Some priorities transcended even divine awakening cycles. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, The Dimensional Archaeologist. Restricted archives say, Section 7 Delta glowed with the ambient blue luminescence of preservation enchantments. Unlike the Academy's main library with its grandiose architecture and ornamental displays, this hidden repository, buried beneath the campus, existed purely for function. Artifacts and texts deemed too dangerous or destabilizing for general knowledge rested in specialized containment units designed to suppress their inherent magical properties. Misha Necron moved with practiced familiarity through the labyrinthine shelving system, her steps making no sound on the crystalline floor. Behind her, Naruto followed with equal silence, though his attention seemed divided between their surroundings and something only he could perceive. The cosmological histories should be in this section, Misha whispered, her voice barely disturbing the archive's oppressive quiet. Faculty rarely access these materials, they're considered largely theoretical with minimal practical application. Theoretical to those without context, Naruto observed, his gaze lingering on a sealed case containing what appeared to be metallic fragments inscribed with symbols that shifted and rearranged themselves continuously. History becomes myth, becomes theory, while artifacts remain stubbornly factual. Misha glanced at him sharply. You recognize these components. Let's focus on the texts first, Naruto deflected smoothly. Quote, artifacts tend to have more aggressive authentication protocols. They continued deeper into the archive until reaching a section where the preservation enchantments intensified, creating a visible boundary between general restricted materials and truly ancient knowledge. Misha placed her palm against an authentication panel, her Necron bloodline signature granting access that would have been denied to most faculty members. The barrier dissolved, revealing a small chamber containing 7 pedestals arranged in a perfect circle. Each held a crystalline sphere roughly the size of a human skull. Their surfaces clouded with swirling patterns that occasionally coalesced into recognizable symbols before dissolving again. The 7 perspectives, Misha identified them with quiet reverence. FIRST age recording devices containing eyewitness accounts of the cosmic restructuring that established our current dimensional configuration. Naruto approached the nearest pedestal, his expression unreadable. They're degraded, he noted, studying the sphere's erratic patterns. Information decay accelerating beyond normal entropy parameters. That's impossible, Misha countered, moving to examine the sphere herself. These crystals were created specifically to resist temporal degradation. They should maintain perfect fidelity for at least 10,000 years. Unless the fundamental principles they record are themselves changing, Naruto suggested, circling the arrangement to study each sphere in turn. Records attempting to maintain accuracy while their subject matter transforms WOULD display exactly this pattern of accelerated degradation. Misha's crimson eyes widened with the implications. You're suggesting the cosmic structure itself is becoming unstable, not just the barriers between dimensions, but the underlying principles governing reality. A working hypothesis, Naruto acknowledged, his casual demeanor belied by the intensity of his examination. These recording crystals function by maintaining with the cosmic patterns they document. If those patterns are destabilizing, then the records would show corresponding deterioration, Misha finished the thought, her analytical mind immediately grasping the significance. But that would mean that the shadow incursion was merely a symptom of something far more fundamental, Naruto concluded, returning to the first sphere. These crystals may contain crucial contextual information about the original restructuring, details that would help us understand the current instabilities. Misha considered this with characteristic thoroughness. Accessing the information requires specialized techniques. The traditional method involves partial consciousness transfer, mentally linking with the crystal to experience the recorded perspectives directly. Dangerous, Naruto observed, though his tone suggested interest rather than concern. Particularly given the degradation you've identified, Misha agreed. Neural patterns could become corrupted during transfer. The Academy hasn't authorized direct access to these records in over 3 centuries. Naruto studied her with newfound appreciation. Yet you know the access protocols. A hint of something almost rebellious flickered across Misha's normally composed features. The Necron bloodline maintains certain knowledge independent of Academy restrictions. My sister focuses on martial applications, I preserve the theoretical and historical techniques. Complementary specializations, Naruto noted with approval. Efficient knowledge preservation strategy. Misha moved to a concealed panel in the chamber's wall, her fingers tracing complex patterns that caused hidden instrumentation to emerge from recesses in the floor. This equipment stabilizes the mental connection and provides emergency extraction capabilities if the user becomes disoriented within the recorded experiences. I'm familiar with the basic principles, Naruto commented, examining the ancient technology with casual recognition that might have seemed suspicious had Misha not been focused on her preparations. Who attempts the connection? Misha asked once the equipment had fully deployed. As initiator of this research, I'm prepared to accept the risks. Naruto considered the options with uncharacteristic seriousness. The degradation patterns signify temporal distortion within the records. Your consciousness, while exceptional for your age, lacks certain resilience factors that might provide additional protection. You're offering to attempt the connection yourself, Misha observed, studying him with analytical intensity. Despite the fact that these records might contain direct information about the Azure Destroyer's role in cosmic restructuring. Naruto smiled slightly. Perhaps I'm simply curious about how history recorded those events. Or perhaps you're ensuring I don't access unfiltered information about your true nature, Misha countered. Though her tone remained academic rather than accusatory. An understandable precaution given faculty suspicions. Trust works both ways, Naruto acknowledged. What if we attempt a synchronized connection? Partial linkage of our consciousness patterns during the transfer could provide mutual stabilization while allowing both perspectives on the information. Misha's expression revealed genuine surprise. Synchronized consciousness transfer is theoretically possible but extremely dangerous. Neural patterns can become permanently entangled, resulting in blended personalities or fractured identity. Only if the participants lack sufficient self-definition, Naruto replied with quiet confidence. I suspect both of us have adequately developed identity constructs to maintain separation while benefiting from mutual anchoring. The proposal was audacious, unprecedented, and theoretically fascinating, a combination virtually guaranteed to appeal to Misha's intellect. Tool curiosity despite the obvious risks. After a moment of calculation, she nodded decisively. The research potential justifies the risk parameters. We'll need to establish preliminary consciousness resonance before attempting full transfer. She adjusted the equipment configuration, creating two connection points rather than the standard single-user setup. The ancient technology responded with surprising adaptability, suggesting it had been designed with multiple user capabilities despite traditional academy protocols restricting access to individual researchers. Have you attempted consciousness transfer before? Misha inquired as she completed the calibrations. In various forms, Naruto replied ambiguously. Though perhaps not with this specific technology. They positioned themselves on opposite sides of the central sphere, the one recording the Demon King's direct perspective during the cosmic restructuring. Misha initiated the connection sequence, her hands forming precise gestures that activated the ancient machinery. Crystalline components began to resonate in harmonic progression, creating an energy field that enveloped both researchers. Synchronized consciousness entry in 3, 2, 1. Reality shifted around them as their awareness separated from physical forms and entered the recorded perspective contained within the crystal. The transition manifested, not as simple visual imagery but as complete sensory immersion, becoming the perspective rather than merely observing it. Power beyond mortal comprehension coursed through them, the Demon King at the height of his abilities, channeling energies that could reshape reality itself. Around them swirled chaotic dimensional forces as multiple reality planes threatened to collapse into catastrophic convergence. The boundaries fail faster than we can repair them, came a voice both familiar and strange, the Demon King's thoughts as he surveyed the cosmic disaster unfolding across multiple planes of existence. Even with 7 anchors established, the degradation accelerates beyond containment parameters. Their perspective shifted, focusing on another figure working alongside the Demon King. A being wreathed in azure energy that manipulated dimensional coordinates with casual mastery. Though the figure's appearance shifted continuously, something about its fundamental essence remained constant across all manifestations. The structural integrity cannot be maintained through conventional binding, the azure being stated, its voice resonating with multiple harmonic overtones that suggested communications beyond simple sound. Creation and destruction must achieve new equilibrium or the entire cosmic framework collapses. Your proposed solution remains unacceptable, the Demon King responded, their shared perspective revealing his internal conflict between desperate necessity and moral reservation. The casualties would be incalculable. Casualties are already incalculable, the azure being countered, manipulating equations that manifested as living mathematical constructs around them. Controlled restructuring minimizes overall suffering while establishing sustainable parameters. The alternative is complete dissolution of all affected dimensions. The memory perspective shifted again, accelerating through multiple stages of what appeared to be complex negotiations between cosmic entities. Fragments of conversations, mathematical proofs, and ethical arguments blended together as the Demon King and the Azure being developed a collaborative approach. Fundamental philosophical differences. The Silver Sea concept has merit, the Demon King acknowledged in a later segment, studying simulated projections of a metaphysical buffer zone between dimensional planes. A preservation medium for essence patterns that cannot be maintained in their current configurations. Creation through destruction, the azure being confirmed, its form momenta. Riley stabilizing into something almost recognizable. My natural function redirected toward preservation rather than simple dissolution. And the price? The Demon King inquired, Hearn revealing awareness of unstated costs. Balance requires sacrifice, the azure being replied, mathematical patterns around it shifting toward increasingly complex equilibrium equations. One of us must maintain in the external framework while the other establishes the internal preservation matrix. Neither can accomplish both simultaneously. Asterisk. You propose division of essential cosmic functions, the Demon King realized. Calculations immediately assessing implications. Unprecedented and potentially irreversible. Asterisk. The alternative remains total cosmic dissolution, the azure being reminded him. Functional division preserves existence itself, albeit in reconfigured form. Asterisk. The memory accelerated again, moving toward implementation of their desperate solution. The Demon King establishing 7A. NCHOR points within a new dimensional framework, creating territories that would maintain separation between formerly collapsing reality planes. The azure being simultaneously crafting a metaphysical buffer zone, the Silver Sea, designed to preserve essential patterns from realities too damaged to maintain independent existence. Asterisk. The perspective suddenly fractured as their collaborative working relationship transformed into apparent conflict. Other entities entered the equation, shadowy presences whose nature and intentions remained obscured even in the Demon King's direct memory. The Azure Bay, NG's form began to fragment under combined assault from these newcomers, its fundamental essence under attack even as it completed the Silver Sea's creation. Asterisk. Betrayal was inevitable, the Azure being communicated directly to the Demon King as their alliance apparently dissolved. They fear what they cannot control. Maintain the narrative they expect while preserving the truth for those who will follow. Asterisk. The Demon King's response remained encrypted even within his own memory, suggesting information deliberately concealed even from potential future access. The perspective shifted one final time to reveal the Azure being, now clearly recognizable as a primordial version of Naruto, willingly accepting confinement within a complex sealing array that would suppress its cosmic powers and fraud. G meant its consciousness across multiple incarnation cycles. Asterisk. Until the patterns converge again, were its final words before the sealing completed, reducing the god of destruction to a fraction of its true nature. Watch for the Azure Harbinger when the 7th cycle completes. Asterisk. The memory recording ended abruptly, ejecting Misha and Naruto from the shared perspective with disorienting suddenness. They returned to physical awareness in the archive chamber, the connection equipment powering down automatically as the transfer concluded. Misha stared at Naruto across the central pedestal, normally composed features showing genuine shock. You, she whispered, crimson eyes wide with realization. It was you. Naruto met her gaze steadily, his casual student persona temporarily set aside. A version of me, he acknowledged quietly, from before the sealing and subsequent incarnation cycles. The god of destruction, Misha stated, her analytical mind rapidly integrating this confirmation with previous theories. Not the enemy of the Demon King as historical texts claim, but his ally in preventing complete cosmic dissolution. History simplifies complex realities, Naruto replied, his voice carrying subtle harmonics similar to those they had experienced in the recorded memory. The narrative of conflict served multiple purposes, including protecting the true nature of arrangement from those who sought to prevent it. Misha processed this revelation with remarkable composure, her initial shock quickly giving way to methodical analysis. The current barrier instabilities, they represent the completion of the 7th cycle mentioned in the memory. The final incarnation sequence before potential reawakening, Naruto confirmed, studying her reaction carefully. Though external factors are accelerating the timeline beyond original parameters, the shadow entities, Misha realized, connections forming rapidly in her exceptional mind. They serve whatever forces opposed your alliance with the Demon King, the ones who insisted on your sealing. Certain cosmic entities believed destruction should be eliminated rather than balanced, Naruto explained, CES of ancient weariness entering his expression. They failed to understand that destruction is merely the precursor to new creation, a necessary aspect of cosmic renewal. Misha considered this with the serious contemplation it deserved. Why reveal this to me? Allowing me to access these memories provides confirmation of your true nature, information that could prove dangerous if shared with suspicious faculty members. 2 reasons, Naruto replied with unexpected candor. First, practical necessity. The accelerating instabilities require informed cooperation rather than isolated intervention. Second, he paused, something almost uncertain crossing his features. The Necron bloodline carries specific resonance patterns designed to recognize and interact with my essence across incarnation cycles. You were always meant to know, Misha. This additional revelation caused her to lean against the equipment console for momentary support. My bloodline was created for this purpose. To assist your eventual re-emergence. Not created, but selectively developed, Naruto clarified. The Demon King identified certain consciousness patterns with natural affinity for the work we began. The Necron line represents one of 7 specialized bloodlines established to maintain different aspects of the cosmic framework. And my sister? Misha asked, her composure returning as she processed these extraordinary revelations. Complementary aspect of the same pattern, Naruto explained. Protection and implementation to balance your knowledge and analysis. Together, you represent a complete, functional unit within the larger design. Misha absorbed this information with remarkable adaptability, her exceptional intellect quickly moving beyond shock to practical implications. The faculty, why suspects aspects of this but lacks comprehensive understanding. Their monitoring of you stems from fragmented prophecies and incomplete historical records. Precisely, Naruto confirmed, which eats both opportunities and complications for addressing the accelerating instabilities. We need more information, Misha decided, professional focus overriding existential implications. These Mori crystals provide historical context but limited practical guidance for current circumstances. There's another resource we should investigate, Naruto suggested, his posture shifting subtly as he reintegrated aspects of his casual student persona. The archaeological expedition departing tomorrow for the northern ruins. Recent tectonic activity has exposed sections of a first-age temple complex that might contain relevant information about the original ceiling configuration. Misha nodded thoughtfully. My research clearance should allow me to join the expedition. Your involvement might prove more challenging given increased faculty scrutiny. Unless I receive a formal recommendation from my assigned training partner, Naruto pointed out with a hint of his usual irreverence returning. Royal descendants can nominate exceptional students for specialized field experience. Convincing my sister to recommend you for anything would require substantial diplomatic skill, Misha observed dryly. Her suspicions regarding your nature have only intensified since the shadow incursion. Then perhaps it's time I demonstrated enough of my abilities to earn her professional respect, if not her personal trust. Naruto suggested, a strategic gleam entering his ancient eyes. Tomorrow's combat assessment provides the perfect opportunity. As they carefully deactivated the remaining equipment and prepared to leave the restricted section, Misha studied her research partner with newfound awareness. The casual transfer paired exactly that, a carefully constructed identity concealing something vast and ancient beneath. Yet rather than finding this deception disturbing, she recognized its necessity given the cosmic stakes involved. The memory transfer created preliminary consciousness resonance between us, she noted as they navigated back through the archive's labyrinthine organization. Certain neural patterns appear to have synchronized beyond standard parameters. End sequence of your bloodline's designed affinity, Naruto confirmed. The connection would have been significantly more disruptive with any other consciousness pattern. Is this why I feel strangely comfortable with knowledge that should be existentially terrifying? Misha inquired with clinical detachment. Learning one studies alongside an incarnated deity should produce more significant psychological disruption. Naruto smiled, a genuine expression rather than his usual casual grin. Your remarkable adaptability is entirely your own, Misha Necron. Though perhaps your bloodline was selected precisely because of such cognitive resilience. They reached the archive's exit point, both automatically adjusting their posture and expressions to avoid drawing attention as they emerged into more public academy spaces. No outward sign betrayed the extraordinary revelations they now shared, their composed exteriors concealing information that could reshape understanding of cosmic history. Until tomorrow, then, Misha stated simply, turning toward the royal residence tower. Until tomorrow, Naruto echoed, watching her depart with newfound appreciation for the remarkable consciousness contained within her seemingly ordinary form. Neither noticed Professor Thalric observing their exit from a shadowed alcove, his hawkish features tight with suspicion as he noted the time they had spent in restricted archives. The silver-haired professor waited until both had disappeared from view before approaching the archive entrance, his authorization crystal glowing as he accessed the system's monitoring functions to determine exactly which materials had drawn their shared interest. The combat assessment arena differed significantly from standard training facilities. Where practice areas emphasized safety and controlled power application, the assessment arena was designed to evaluate true combat potential under conditions approximating actual battlefield scenarios. Environmental hazards, unpredictable terrain shifts, and minimal protective enchantments created a testing ground that revealed both technical proficiency and adaptive capability. Students gathered in observation galleries surrounding the massive octagonal space, their excited conversations creating a constant background hum. Today's assessments carried particular significance. Performance results would determine ineligibility for the upcoming inter-territory tournament, where exceptional students could attract attention from potential sponsors and specialized training programs. Sasha Necron waited in the preparation area, her silver blade resting across her knees as she engaged in traditional pre-combat meditation. Unlike many participants who supplemented their abilities with various enchanted items and consumable enhancements, Sasha relied solely on her natural talents and the ancestral weapon that served as focus for her considerable power. The preparation area's door slid open, admitting Naruto with his characteristic unhurried confidence. Today he had finally conceded to proper uniform regulations, his attire meeting academy standards while still maintaining subtle personalization in the form of orange trim that matched no official designation. "You're actually on time," Sasha observed without opening her eyes or interrupting her meditative breathing. "Surprisingly professional. Important occasions warrant punctuality," Naruto replied, settling on a bench opposite her position. "Partner assessment determines tournament eligibility, after all." Sasha opened her amber eyes, studying him with undisguised scrutiny. "Your sudden interest in academy protocols and advancement opportunities seems convenient, particularly given your request to join the Northern Ruins expedition." "Misha mentioned my interest, then," Naruto noted, unsurprised. "I assumed she would consult you before considering my participation." "My sister and I don't keep secrets from each other," Sasha stated firmly, though something in her tone suggested this principle had recently been tested. "She believes your expertise might prove valuable during the expedition. I remain unconvinced. Hence wise opportunity to demonstrate practical value," Naruto concluded, his casual demeanor unaffected by her evident skepticism. "What specifically would convince you, Sasha Necron?" "Technical proficiency, tactical adaptability, power management." The directness of the question momentarily disrupted her composure. Most students either attempted to curry favor through flattery or responded to her skepticism with defensive posturing. Naruto's straightforward acknowledgement of her decision-making authority demonstrated unexpected respect for her position. "Coordination," she decided after brief consideration. "The expedition team functions as a unit, not a collection of individual specialists. Your independent capabilities are evident, if unconventional. Your ability to integrate those abilities with others remains unproven." "Reasonable assessment criteria," Naruto acknowledged with a slight nod. "The combat scenario should provide adequate opportunity to demonstrate teamwork potential." A crystalline chime sounded throughout the preparation area, signaling imminent commencement. Sasha rose fluidly, sheathing her blade with practiced precision. "Our assessment opponents are Cress Barthor and Elaine Ars Magna," she informed him as they moved toward the arena entrance. "Cress specializes in overwhelming offensive pressure, while Elaine utilizes temporal manipulation for strategic advantage. They've partnered successfully in previous exercises." "Interesting combination," Naruto observed, genuine curiosity entering his expression. "Temporal manipulation requires exceptional control parameters. Your sister's research partner has unusual talents." "Elaine's abilities remain partially classified," Sasha replied as they reached the entrance corridor. "Academy regulations limit her temporal adjustments to microsecond ranges during sanctioned combat, but even that minor advantage creates significant tactical opportunities when combined with Cress's aggressive style." "Time and pressure," Naruto summarized thoughtfully. "Elegant partnership design." The corridor ended at a massive gate that slowly ascended to reveal the combat arena. Today's configuration featured ed platforms of varying sizes connected by narrow bridges, with sections of unstable terrain interspersed throughout the lower levels. Environmental hazards included localized gravity fluctuations, random electrical discharge points, and semi-transparent barrier fields that would unpredictably redirect both physical movement and energy projections. Across the arena, Another gate opened to admit Cress and Elaine. The crimson-haired noble's confident posture contrasted with his partner's ethereal demeanor. Where Cress projected aggressive dominance, Elaine seemed almost insubstantial, her silver white hair and pale features creating the impression of someone only partially anchored to conventional reality. Professor Emeria's amplified voice addressed participants and observers. Combat AS. SS meant Protocol 7. Territory control with progressive hazard escalation. Objective parameters include platform dominance, opponent displacement, and hazard navigation. Assessment concludes upon foe RCE neutralization or safety threshold violation. The professor paused briefly before continuing. Given recent security incidents and specialized abilities among today's participants, additional monitoring protocols have been implemented. Excessive power manifestation or prohibited techniques intervention and disqualification. This unusual addendum drew murmurs from observing students, NY correctly assuming the warning was specifically directed at Naruto given his performance during the entrance trials. In the faculty observation booth, several professors had positioned themselves WITH containment artifacts visible, a precautionary measure that further emphasized their concerns regarding the transfer students' unpredictable capabilities. They're expecting problems, Sasha noted, quietly as they took their initial positions on the nearest platform. Your reputation creates tactical disadvantages through increased scrutiny, or advantages through misdirection, Naruto countered with surprising strategic insight. Expected problem areas draw attention away from unexpected approaches. Sasha reassessed her partner with narrowed eyes, recognizing the comment as legitimate. Tactical observation rather than casual deflection. Before she could respond, the assessment commencement signal resonated throughout the arena, officially beginning the combat scenario. Cress initiated action immediately, launching a barrage of energy projectiles that forced Sasha and Naruto to separate defensively. The noble's technique sacrificed precision for overwhelming volume, effectively denying them access to the central platforms while he and Elaine established advantageous positioning. Standard opening, Sasha analyzed, her blade deflecting projectiles with economical movements. They'll maintain pressure while Elaine implements temporal advantages across key terrain features. Naruto nodded, studying the battlefield with analytical intensity that belied his usual casual demeanor. The environmental hazards activate in predictable sequences despite appearing random. 3-second intervals with 7-second complete pattern repetition. Sasha glanced at him sharply. You determined the pattern already. Pattern recognition is a specialty, he replied, tracking Elaine's movements with particular focus. Your temporal specialist is establishing microfields at junction points between platforms. Clever application. Creating localized time dilation to complicate navigation through those areas. Direct confrontation disadvantages us against their established synergy, Sasha assessed. Mentally calculating alternative approaches. We need to disrupt their coordination before engaging. Agreed, Naruto replied, surprising her with immediate acceptance of her tactical direction. Suggest indirect approach through lower terrain levels. Environmental hazards provide coverage for repositioning while presenting targeting challenges for their ranged pressure. THE strategy demonstrated both sound tactical thinking and willingness to follow her lead, exactly the coordination capabilities she had challenged him to demonstrate. Without further discussion, they descended to the lower arena levels where unstable terrain and fluctuating gravity fields created unpredictable movement conditions. From the observation gallery, students watched with varying degrees of technical appreciation as the assessment unfolded. Those with combat training recognized the sophisticated strategic adjustment, sacrificing immediate platform control to establish superior positioning for subsequent engagement. Others simply enjoyed the visual spectacle as energy discharges and gravity anomalies created dramatic effects throughout the arena. In the faculty observation booth, Professor Thalric leaned forward with intense focus, his hawkish features tight with concentration as he tracked Naruto's movements. He's deliberately constraining his capabilities, he noted to Professor Emeria beside him. Operating well below the power thresholds we observed during the entrance trials. Appropriate adjustment to assessment parameters, Emeria replied, though her own attention remained equally fixed on the transfer student. Our calculated concealment of true potential. The Necron girl leads, he follows, Thalric observed as Sasha and Naruto navigated a particularly challenging terrain section with complementary movements, establishing trust through deference to her authority. Clever manipulation if one suspects ulterior motives, or genuine teamwork if one doesn't. Begin with suspicion as the default position, Emeria countered, her tone suggesting growing weariness with her colleague's persistent paranoia. Below in the arena, the assessment had entered its econ phase as random terrain segments began to destabilize completely, requiring participants to adapt to rapidly changing battlefield conditions. Cress and Elaine maintained their dominant position on central platforms, but their coordination showed subtle strain as they attempted to track their opponents through increasingly chaotic lower levels. They're becoming frustrated, Sasha noted as another barrage of energy projectiles missed their position by a significant margin. Cress relies on overwhelming targets quickly. Prolonged engagement depletes his reserves and disrupts his rhythm. Elaine compensates with temporal efficiency, Naruto observed, studying the pale woman's increasingly complex casting patterns. But micro-adjustments across multiple field points creates cumulative strain. Her concentration will falter approximately 47 seconds from now based on current expenditure rates. Sasha glanced at him with newfound professional respect. That's an extraordinarily precise assessment from limited observation data. Time manipulation follows mathematical constants despite its apparently unpredictable effects, Naruto explained as they repositioned for their planned counterattack. The energy requirement curves become predictably steeper as application duration increases. This casually delivered insight into advanced theoretical magic might have raised further questions about Naruto's background under different circumstances. At present, however, Sasha focused on the tactical advantage his analysis provided. We initiate when her concentration breaks, she decided, adjusting her planned approach accordingly. I'll engage Cress directly while you neutralize the temporal advantages. Efficient distribution of specialized focus, Naruto agreed, once again demonstrating unexpected willingness to function as supportive partner rather than primary combatant. They waded through continuing barrages and environmental hazards, maintaining defense. Positioning while Cress's frustration manifested in increasingly aggressive but less precise attacks. When Elaine's casting rhythm finally faltered, exactly as Naruto had predicted, they launched their coordinated counteroffensive. Sasha ascended to the central platforms with explosive speed, her silver blade trailing azure energy as she engaged Cress directly. The noble's surprise at her sudden appearance created momentary defensive disorganization that she exploited with precision strikes targeting not his person but the energy channeling foci embedded in his specialized gauntlets. Simultaneously, Naruto implemented an entirely different approach to neutralizing Elaine. Rather than attacking directly, he established a specialized sealing array that propagated through the temporal manipulation fields she had created throughout the arena. The technique didn't disrupt her magic but instead stabilized its effects, transforming unpredictable temporal fluctuations into consistent, manageable patterns. What are you doing? Elaine demanded, her normally ethereal voice sharpened with surprise as she felt her carefully crafted temporal advantages transformed. That's not conventional counter magic. Harmonic stabilization, Naruto replied as he completed the sealing array with precise gestures. Your temporal fields remain active but oscillate at predictable frequencies rather than chaotic ones. This unexpected approach, neutralizing an opponent's advantage by stabilizing rather than destroying it, demonstrated sophisticated magical theory application that drew murmurs of appreciation from academically inclined observers. Wrath Elaine with superior power, Naruto had essentially refined her own technique into a more ordered form that nullified its tactical advantages. On the central platform, Sasha's engagement with Cress had evolved into a showcase of contrasting combat philosophies. The noble relied on overwhelming force and aggressive pressure, his techniques designed to shatter defenses through sheer power. Sasha embodied disciplined efficiency, each movement precisely calculated to maximize effect while minimizing energy expenditure. Her systematic targeting of his equipment rather than direct personal attacks demonstrated both tactical sophistication and professional restraint. Fight properly, Necron, Cress snarled as another precisely placed strike aimed his left gauntlet's primary focusing crystal. Or are royal descendants too delicate for actual combat? Combat isn't about emotional satisfaction, Sasha replied calmly, her blade interceptee. ing his increasingly desperate attacks with economical movements. It's about achieving objectives with appropriate resource allocation. This philosophical difference extended beyond their physical techniques to fundamental approaches toward power itself. Cress viewed his abilities as tools for domination, while Sasha treated hers as resources requiring responsible management. The contrast perfect. Lee illustrated the Academy's ongoing tension between traditional hierarchical values and emerging meritocratic principles. With Elaine's temporal advantages neutralized and Cress increasingly frustrated by Sasha's methodical dismantling of his offensive capabilities, the assessment's outcome became increasingly apparent to experienced observers. The faculty monitoring team began preparing conclusion protocols. Their earlier concerns about Naruto's potentially excessive power display replaced by professional appreciation for the technical sophistication both teams had demonstrated. Then everything changed in an instant. A localized dimensional distortion manifested without warning at the arena's center, not part of the planned environmental hazards but something external forcing its way into the controlled space. The disruption expanded rapidly, forming a swirling vortex of unstable energy that immediately began drawing in loose objects and destabilizing the arena's carefully maintained enchantments. Containment breach, Professor Emeria announced through the emergency communication system. Assessment terminated. All participants implement emergency evacuation protocols immediately. Faculty members activated protective barriers around the observation galleries, securing student spectators from potential danger while additional security personnel converged on access points. The dimensional distortion continued expanding, its swirling energies now producing visible stress fractures in the arena's structural supports. On the central platform, Cress and Sasha immediately suspended their combat. Professional training overriding competitive instincts as they assessed the unexpected threat. Elaine appeared particularly affected by the phenomenon, her connection to tempo. Raw energies creating resonance effects that visibly distorted her form as she struggled to maintain coherence. Uncontrolled dimensional rupture, she identified, her voice distorting with fluctuating harmonics. Similar energy signature to the shadow incursion but significantly less stable. This isn't a controlled summoning. It's a desperate breach attempt. Naruto had already moved toward the distortion, his casual demeanor completely replaced by focused intensity as he analyzed the phenomenon. Forced entry point using residual energy patterns from the previous incursion, he confirmed, azure energy beginning to manifest around his hands as he prepared to address the breach. Crude but effective exploitation of weakened barrier sections. Security forces are responding, Sasha noted, as uniformed personnel established containment positions around the arena perimeter. We should evacuate as instructed. Conventional containment protocols will fail against this breach type, Naruto countered. Already implementing a different approach as his hands wove complex patterns that manipulated the dimensional energies directly. The rupture needs to be resealed from within the distortion pattern, not externally suppressed. Quote, before Sasha could object to this clear deviation from evacuation protocols, the distortion surged violently, temporarily overwhelming Naruto's initial stabilization attempts. The dimensional breach expanded further, creating a visible aperture through which something began to emerge, a figure composed of shifting shadows similar to those from the previous incursion but significantly more substantial. Vazrith, Sasha identified with shock, recognizing the masked entity that had invaded her family's quarters. How is he accessing Academy grounds through controlled dimensional barriers? Your shadow acquaintance has powerful sponsors, Naruto observed grimly, adjusting his approach as the situation evolved. Instead of attempting to close the breach directly, he began establishing a complex containment perimeter that would limit its expansion while allowing the emerging entity to complete its transition. Sometimes controlling the inevitable produces better outcomes than forcing impossible prevention. This strategic adaptation, recognizing when containment proved more viable than elimination, demonstrated sophisticated crisis management. Immediately impressed Sasha despite the dangerous circumstances. Rather than expending resources futilely attempting to prevent Vazrith's emergence, Naruto focused on minimizing collateral effects. While preparing for subsequent confrontation, the shadow entity completed its transition into their reality, the dimensional breach collapsing behind it with unexpected suddenness that suggested external control rather than natural closure. Vazrith's obsidian armor gleamed with unsettling iridescence under the arena's illumination, his masked face turning slowly as he surveyed the containment forces surrounding his position. Inefficient response protocols, he observed, his voice carrying those same unnatural harmonics Sasha remembered from their previous encounter. Your defensive parameters remain predictably inadequate. Professor Emeria stepped forward from the security cordon, her administrative authority momentarily setting aside as she assumed direct magical confrontation stance. You violate Sovereign Academy territory, Shadow Walker. Identify your purpose or face immediate neutralization. My purpose stands before you, Vazrith replied, his glowing eyes fixing on Naruto with unmistakable recognition. The Azure Destroyer walks incarnate while ancient bindings fail. The seventh protocol activates as prophesied. This public declaration of Naruto's suspected nature shocked reactions from observing faculty and students alike. Professor Thalric's expression transformed from suspicion to vindicated certainty as his warnings about the transfer student received errant confirmation from an unexpected source. Naruto himself remained focused on the immediate tactical situation rather than reputation implications. Your previous extraction attempt failed, he noted calmly, addressing Vazrith directly. This unsubtle approach seems equally unlikely to succeed given the assembled containment resources. Extraction was never my purpose, Vazrith corrected, Pr. Odusing a crystalline object from dimensional storage, a device resembling an ornate puzzle box covered in shifting runic patterns. Confirmation and activation fulfill my current directive. Before security forces could respond, Vazrith activated the device, causing it to levitate before him as its components reconfigured themselves into increasingly complex arrangements. Energy began pulsing from the transformed object, sweeping across the arena in expanding waves that passed through conventional matter while interacting with specific magical frequencies. Resonance scanner, Elaine identified, her telling unique perception of the device's function. It's mapping magical signature patterns throughout the academy grounds. Targeting system, Sasha corrected grimly, recognizing Militar Y applications from her specialized training. Establishing priority identification for subsequent precision strikes. Naruto moved with sudden decisive purpose, azure energy manifesting around him with greater intensity than he had previously revealed during academy activities. His hands formed sealing patterns of extraordinary complexity as he systematically interfered with the scanning device's operation, introducing mathematical irregularities into its mapping functions. Interesting countermeasure attempt, Vazrith acknowledged, adjusting the device's parameters in response. Your incarnate limitations remain significant despite partial awakening. The binding seals continue functioning as designed. This cryptic exchange occurred amid escalating security response as faculty members implemented progressively more powerful containment techniques. Professor Emeria coordinated a synchronized suppression field designed to neutralize both Vazrith and his scanning device simultaneously, while Professor Thalric activated specialized artifacts clearly intended for entity banishment. The combined faculty response created impressive magical displays but achieved limited practical effect. Vazrith's obsidian armor absorbed or deflected conventional suppression techniques while his scanning device continued operating despite Naruto's interference attempts. The shadow entities NT immunity to standard academy security protocols suggested sophisticated countermeasures specifically designed to overcome established defenses. Scan sequence complete, Vazrith announced as the device refolded itself into its original configuration. Target confirmation achieved. Secondary objectives identified. His glowing gaze shifted momentarily to Sasha and then beyond her to where Misha had appeared at the arena entrance. Apparently drawn by awareness of the security breach, the Necron vessels develop as projected. Synchronization potential approaches optimal parameters. This PTIC statement regarding the Necron sisters drew Naruto's immediate attention, his expression sharpening with something beyond tactical concern. Your masters misunderstand fundamental principles, he stated. Azure energy intensifying around him as he apparently reconsidered his power constraint protocols. The vessels choose their own harmonization patterns. Forced synchronization negates essential resonance qualities. Theoretical distinctions without practical relevance, Vazrith dismissed, securing the scanning device in dimensional storage once more. The awakening proceeds regardless of philosophical preferences. We merely optimize efficiency parameters within established outcome requirements. With these enigmatic pronouncements delivered, the shadow entity implemented departure protocols that differed significantly from his dramatic arrival. Rather than opening another dimensional breach, Vazrith simply phased from conventional perception, not teleporting to another location, but shifting his existence into a frequency range beyond standard detection capabilities. Dimensional phase shift, Elaine identified, her temporal sensitivity allowing momentary tracking of the entity's transition. He's still present but operating at altered existence parameters that bypass conventional detection methods. Significantly more sophisticated capability than standard shadow walking, Naruto confirmed. His azure energy gradually receding as immediate threats diminished. Your visitor has received substantial upgrades since your previous encounter, Sasha Necron. Sasha's EXPR. Eshin revealed complex calculation as she processed both the security breach and the cryptic exchanges between Naruto and Vazrith. He identified you as the Azure Destroyer, in front of faculty and students, she noted, studying her partner's reaction carefully. A designation associated with apocalyptic prophecies regarding cosmic dissolution. People enjoy applying dramatic labels to things they don't fully understand. Naruto replied, his casual demeanor gradually reasserting itself as security protocols normalized around them, particularly entities from shadowy organizations with apocalyptic fixations. This deliberate deflection might have seemed more convincing had Professor Thalric not immediately implemented specialized containment protocols specifically targeting Naruto. Cry. Stalin restraint projectors surrounded the transfer student, generating a suppression field designed for entity containment rather than standard student discipline. Naruto Uzumaki, the Silver High Red Professor announced with formal gravity, you are hereby detained under Academy Security Protocol 17 regarding suspected existential threats. Cooperation is advised but not required for protocol implementation. Professor Emeria appeared significantly less convinced regarding this extreme measure. Protocol 17 requires substantiated evidence beyond unverified claims from hostile entities, Professor Thalric. Your authorization remains incomplete without council approval. The shadow entity confirmed suspicions established through multiple independent investigations, Thalric countered. Producing a crystalline authorization seal bearing emergency authentication patterns. Chancellor Vex left contingency directives specifically addressing this scenario. As this administrative conflict developed, Naruto remained surprisingly compliant within the containment field, making no attempt to resist or disrupt the suppression effects. His relaxed posture suggested either confidence in eventual resolution or strategic acceptance of temporary constraint. This containment seems unnecessarily dramatic, he commented mildly, addressing Professor Emeria rather than the more hostile Thalric. I'm happy to discuss cosmic dissolution prophecies and mysterious shadow entities in a more conventional setting without all the crystalline restraint technology. Protocol Impel Me. Entation continues regardless of subject commentary, Thalric stated firmly, adjusting containment parameters to prevent direct communication. Secure facility transfer authorization confirmed. Transpo. RT team proceeding with containment vehicle preparation. Sasha observed these developments with outward professional detachment that concealed intensive internal calculation. The public identificati on of her training partner as a potentially apocalyptic entity should have vindicated her initial suspicions. Instead, she found herself increasingly skeptical of both Vazrith's claims and the Academy's extreme response. Professor Emeria, she addressed the acting chancellor formally, as Naruto Uzumaki's assigned training partner, I request permission to accompany the containment transport to secure facilities. Academy regulations specify continuous monitoring responsibility for royal descendants when partnered with special classification subjects. This creative interpretation of Academy protocols, essentially inventing a regulatory requirement to maintain contact with Naruto, demonstrated unexpected advocacy that clearly surprised Professor Thalric. His hawkish features tightened with suspicion as he studied Sasha's composed expression, searching for motivations beyond her stated procedural concerns. Request approved, Professor Emeria decided before Thalric could formulate objections. Royal descendant oversight aligns with established protocols for special classification transfers. Coordinate with security personnel for appropriate containment vehicle positioning. As security staff implemented these directives, Misha approached her sister with outward calm that concealed significant concern. Interesting advocacy, she observed quietly. Your assessment of our transfee Our student appears to have evolved despite repeated suspicions regarding his nature. Procedural propriety matters regardless of personal opinions, Sasha replied evenly. The expression conveyed additional meaning for her perceptive sister. Proper protocols protect everyone involved, not just the subject of investigation. Misha nodded slightly, understanding the underlying message. Sasha's involvement provided observation opportunities and potential intervention capabilities should improper procedures occur during Naruto's containment transfer. Despite her persistent doubts about the transfer student, Sasha's fundamental commitment to justice apparently extended even to suspected apocalyptic entities. The Northern Ruins expedition departs tomorrow morning, Misha noted, apparently changing subjects entirely. Archaeological teams report preliminary findings suggesting first-age temple complexes with preservation levels exceeding previous discoveries. An academic observation with interesting timing, Sasha commented, recognizing her sister's indirect communication style. Though expedition staffing may require adjustments given recent security developments. Professor Kagam, Aishinano specifically requested comprehensive documentation of any architectural elements featuring spiral patterns or azure coloration, Misha continued, her seemingly casual academic discussion conveying targeted information. Apparently such elements hold particular historical significance regarding dimensional barrier construction techniques. This oblique reference to connections between Northern Ruins and Naruto's suspected nature confirmed Sasha's growing suspicion that her sister possessed significantly more information than she had previously shared. The implications, that Misha had been independently investigating the transfer student's true identity while maintaining outward professional distance, suggested complexity beyond standard academic curiosity. Documentation protocols will be implemented appropriately, Sasha acknowledged, accepting the indirect information transfer without pressing for elaboration that might draw unwanted attention from nearby security personnel. Assuming expedition schedules maintained despite containment priorities, their cryptic exchange concluded as containment transport preparations completed. Security staff escorted Naruto, still surrounded by crystalline suppression technology, toward specialized vehicles designed for entity transportation. Throughout the process, he maintained remarkable composure for someone publicly identified as a potentially apocalyptic being. His relaxed demeanor suggesting either innocence or confidence in eventual resolution. As Sasha moved to accompany the transport as authorized, Naruto glanced toward her with an expression that contained neither resentment nor alarm but rather something resembling amused appreciation. Unexpected advocacy, he commented quietly as they approached the transport vehicle. Professional responsibility or personal curiosity. Proper protocols benefit everyone involved, Sasha replied with deliberate neutrality, though her amber eyes communicated more complex assessment than her words suggested. Even potentially apocalyptic transfer students with questionable enrollment documentation. A genuine smile touched Naruto's features despite the serious circumstances. Fair perspective. Though I should mention that apocalyptic prophecies often suffer from significant translation issues across multiple epochs. Context matters tremendously when interpreting cosmic dissolution predictions. Save your explanations for official inquiry protocols, Sasha advised as they entered the specialized transport vehicle under Professor Thalrich's suspicious observation. Procedural recordings provide better documentation than informal conversations during containment transfers. Naruto nodded slightly, accepting this professional guidance while recognizing the underlying message. Formal proceedings created official records that might protect his interests better than unrecorded explanations during transitional custody. Despite her persistent suspicions, Sasha appeared committed to ensuring fair treatment regardless of his potential nature. As the containment transport departed the academy grounds toward specialized security facilities, Professor Emeria returned to administrative offices where urgent communications awaited her attention. The recent security breach had triggered automatic notifications to territorial governance authorities, creating significant political complications beyond immediate tactical concerns. Her communication crystal activated to display a severe-looking woman whose formal attire and multiple authority signifiers identified her as a high-ranking territorial administrator. Reports indicate significant security breach involving interdimensional entities and potential identification of restricted classification subjects. The administrator stated without preamble. Explanation required immediately. Investigation proceeds according to established protocols, Professor Emeria replied with careful precision. PR. Preliminary containment implemented while assessment continues. Situation remains controlled despite unusual manifestation characteristics. The Northern Ruins expedition scheduled for tomorrow morning. G now requires ministerial oversight given potential connections to recent security incidents, the administrator continued, clearly operating from information sources beyond standard academy communications. Minister Zahra al-Samari will personally accompany research teams to ensure appropriate handling of any artifacts with dimensional significance. This unexpected development, direct ministeria, involvement in what should have been routine academic research, indicated political dimensions to recent events that extended beyond the Academy's administrative purview. Professor Emeria maintained professional composure despite this clear territorial authority intrusion into institutional operations. We welcome ministerial participation and will ensure appropriate support resources, she responded with diplomatic precision that concealed her concerns regarding this unusual intervention. Archaeological teams have already been instructed to implement enhanced documentation protocols for architecturally significant elements. The administrator nodded stiffly before terminating communication without further elaboration, leaving Professor Emeria to consider the rapidly escalating complications surrounding their unusual transfer student and his apparent connections to cosmic dissolution prophecies. The involvement of territorial governance suggested information channels beyond standard academic networks. Someone with significant political influence had taken interest in recent developments. As containment transport vehicles proceeded toward specialized security facilities in expedition preparations continued for the Northern Ruins investigation, unseen observers monitored these developments from multiple perspectives. Vazrith, his existence shifted to frequencies beyond conventional detection, observed containment procedures with calculating assessment. Faculty members debated appropriate responses to potential existential threats while students processed dramatic revelations regarding their mysterious transfer colleague. And beneath the academy grounds, in forgotten chambers sealed since the First Age, ancient monitoring systems activated in response to specific RGY signatures detected during the recent confrontation. Crystalline displays illuminated with status updates in a language no current scholar could translate, tracking awakening protocols that had been established millennia earlier during the original cosmic restructuring. The carefully balanced system designed by the Demon King and the Azure Destroyer continued its programmed progression toward an outcome neither fully controlled nor completely understood, cosmic rebalancing operating according to parameters established by entities whose true purposes remained obscured by time, politics, and deliberate mythological manipulation. The specialized containment facility existed in a curious jurisdictional limbo, teeth in academy grounds but administratively separate from educational operations. Its architecture emphasized function over form, with multiple redundant security systems designed to manage entities and artifacts too dangerous for conventional storage but too valuable for destruction. Naruto's assigned containment chamber represented moderate security classification rather than maximum threat parameters, a decision Professor Emeria had insisted upon despite Professor Thalric's more aggressive recommendations. The room contained basic amenities alongside sophisticated monitoring equipment and multiple suppression field generators that currently operated at minimal capacity. Comfortable accommodations considering the circumstances, Naruto observed as he examined the chamber with casual interest. Though the continuous monitoring seems excessive for simple investigative protocols, Professor Emeria, who had personally overseen containment procedures despite Thalric's objections, maintained professional detachment despite evident ambivalence regarding the situation. Protocol 17 requires comprehensive observation during preliminary assessment phases. The restraint parameters have been calibrated to allow normal movement and basic comfort while preventing dimensional manipulation techniques. Thoughtful calibration, Naruto acknowledged, settling onto a functionally designed chair with his characteristic relaxed posture. Though I should mention that dimensional manipulation isn't my primary specialty. Sealing techniques and harmonic stabilization represent my core capabilities. This deliberate redirection toward technical discussion rather than existential identity questions represented strategic communication designed to establish professional dialogue patterns. Professor Emeria recognized the approach but maintained procedural focus. despite personal intellectual curiosity regarding his actual capabilities. Official inquiry proceedings will begin tomorrow morning following preliminary evidence assessment, she informed him, activating final monitoring configurations. Royal descendant Sasha Necron has been authorized to maintain observational presence during containment as specified by partnership protocols. Sasha, hoo-ha, D remained professionally detached throughout transport and containment procedures, positioned herself near the chamber entrance where she could observe both Naruto and external security operations. Her composed expression revealed nothing of her internal assessment regarding the situation's legitimacy or potential outcomes. The containment parameters seem unnecessarily restrictive given demonstrated cooperation levels, she noted with clinical precision rather than advocacy. Protocol 17 allows adjustment based on subject compliance factors. Current parameters remain appropriate pending formal assessment. Professor Emeria replied, though her tone suggested potential reconsideration rather than rigid enforcement. Security Team Alpha maintains exterior monitoring responsibilities. Communication systems remain active for essential notifications. With containment protocols established, Professor Emeria departed to address administrative requirements generated by the unusual situation, leaving Sasha as authorized observer within the secured environment. When monitoring staff had completed final adjustments and similarly withdrawn to external positions, the chamber's ATM Osphere shifted from procedural formality to unexpected conversational potential. Advocacy continues, Naruto observed once they were effectively alone despite remote monitoring. Professional responsibility extends beyond expected parameters. Sasha maintained her composed expression despite the direct acknowledgement. Procedural propriety benefits everyone involved regardless of circumstance classifications. Containment without appropriate oversight creates potential for protocol violations that undermine institutional integrity. Admirably principled perspective, Naruto replied with genuine appreciation rather than ironic commentary. Though I suspect additional motivations beyond procedural correctness inform your continued involvement. This direct challenge to her stated motive Asians might have provoked defensive response from most individuals. Sasha instead considered the observation with characteristic thoroughness before responding with unexpected candor. The shadow N. Chitty Vazrith previously invaded my family's residence with specific interest in both you and my sister, she acknowledged, shifting from purely professional demeanor to more personal assessment. His reappearance and public identification of you as the Azure Destroyer suggests connections to matters directly affecting Necron family interests. Professional monitoring provides legitimate access to information that might clarify these connections. Strategic information gathering disguised as procedural oversight, Naruto summarized with evident respect for the approach. Efficiently multifunctional. You seem remarkably unconcerned about containment under existential threat protocols, Sasha observed, studying his relaxed posture with analytical intensity. Either you're innocent of alleged cosmic identity or confident in eventual resolution despite current restrictions. Perhaps both, perhaps neither, Naruto replied with characteristic ambiguity. Apocalyptic prophecies tend toward dramatic oversimplification of complex cosmic processes. The Azure Destroyer mythology contains significant interpretive distortions that obscure original contextual meaning. You neither confirm nor deny the fundamental identification, Sasha noted with professional precision. While offering alternative interpretive frameworks that potentially mitigate threatening implications without rejecting the basic premise. A genuine smile touched Naruto's features at this accurate assessment of his communication approach. Your analytical capabilities extend beyond combat applicatio into psychological and rhetorical domains. Impressive versatility for combat specialized training. Royal descendants receive comprehensive education beyond primary specialization areas, Sasha replied, accepting the professional compliment without personal attachment. Effective territory administration requires multidisciplinary competence regardless of individual preference patterns. Exchange. Professional respect underlying their continued cautious assessment of each other, established conversational parameters that balanced investigative purpose with cooperative potential. Her persistent suspicions regarding his true nature, Sasha found herself reluctantly appreciating Naruto's consistent demonstration of intellectual and tactical capabilities that aligned with her own professional values. The Northern Ruins expedition continues preparations despite recent security incidents, she noted, transitioning toward information exchange that might reveal additional context regarding current circumstances. Ministerial oversight has been added through direct territorial governance intervention. Interesting development, Naruto acknowledged, recognizing the significant political implications of such high-level involvement. Which ministerial department assumes oversight responsibility? Dimensional antiquities and barrier maintenance, Sasha specified, watching his reaction carefully. Minister Zara al-Samari personally assumes field oversight rather than delegating to departmental representatives. This information produced the first genuine surprise he had observed in Naruto's normally composed demeanor. Something like recognition flickered across his features before his casual expression reasserted itself. Zara al-Samari, he repeated thoughtfully. The name carries interesting etymological connections to first-age terminologies regarding dimensional boundary concepts. You recognize the minister personally? Sasha inquired directly, zing the momentary disruption in his typically controlled presentation. Not in current, I replied with surprising candor before seemingly reconsidering his phrasing. That is, not in her current political position. The name pattern suggests potential bloodline connections to historical figures with specialized dimensional knowledge. This curious phrasing, particularly the reference to current incarnation, added another layer to the accumulating evidence regarding Naruto's unusual nature. Rather than pursuing this specific terminology, however, Sasha focused on the practical implications regarding expedition oversight. Ministerial involvement suggests political dimensions beyond academic research interests, she observed, mentally integrating this development with previous information. Quote, particularly given the proximity to your containment under existential threat protocols. The timing seems unlikely to represent coincidence, Naruto agreed, his analytical assessment aligning with her own despite their otherwise adversarial positioning. The Northern Ruins likely contain information relevant to current dimensional stability concerns, information potentially connected to historic records regarding the Azure Destroyer mythology, which creates interesting jurisdictional questions regarding your current containment status, Sasha noted with strategic insight that demonstrated her political education. Academy security protocols potentially conflict with ministerial authority regarding dimensional entities if your classification falls under barrier maintenance regulati ons rather than educational institution parameters. Naruto studied her with newfound appreciation, recognizing the sophisticated legal and political analysis underlying her seemingly straightforward observation. Jurisdictional ambiguity often creates procedural opportunities unavailable under clearly defined authority structures, he acknowledged. Though navigating such ambiguities requires exceptional diplomatic capabilities. Royal descendants receive specialized training in interjurisdictional negotiation strategies, Sasha replied with professional confidence rather than personal boasting. Particularly regarding matters affecting dimensional stability given the Necron bloodline's historical connection to barrier maintenance responsibilities. This reference to her family's specialized role within the larger governance structure provided opening for more direct discussion regarding historical connections potentially relevant to current circumstances. Before Naruto could pursue this conversational direction, however, the containment chamber's communication system activated with urgent notification tones. Professor Imaria's voice addressed them through the secured channel. Protocol modification authorized under Ministerial Directive 37 Alpha. Containment subject Naruto Uzumaki is temporarily released to expeditionary status under Joint Academy and Ministerial supervision. Specialized knowledge requirements supersede security concerns pending comprehensive assessment completion. This extraordinary procedural reversal, effectively countermanding Professor Thalric's carefully implemented containment protocols, suggested political influence operating at levels significantly beyond normal academy governance structures. Sasha immediately recognized the implications regarding authority conflicts and their potential impact on both institutional operations and individual rights. Unexpected procedural adaptation, she observed with characteristic understatement. Watching Naruto's reaction to this development, Ministerial Directive 37 Alpha references specialized knowledge application requirements during dimensional stability emergencies, Naruto noted with surprisingly specific regulatory awareness. Interesting classification of current circumstances as meeting emergency parameters rather than standard investigative protocols. The containment chain. Ars security systems began systematic deactivation sequences, suppression fields powering down as access restrictions reset to standard monitoring parameters rather than specialized containment configuration. Professor Emeria herself arrived moments later, her expression suggesting complex professional calculation beneath her composed administrative demeanor. Minister Al-Samari has personally authorized your participation in tomorrow's expedition under specialized consultant classification, she informed Naruto directly. Your containment status is suspended rather than terminated, with FINA L determination pending expedition findings and subsequent assessment protocols. Generous reconsideration of my potential contributions, Naruto acknowledged with carefully calibrated appreciation. That neither admitted guilt nor claimed vindication. I assume additional security protocols accompany this provisional reclassification. Comprehensive monitoring continues under Joint Academy and Ministerial supervision. Professor Emeria confirmed, activating a crystalline device that transferred modified authorization parameters to Academy security systems. Royal descendant Sasha Necron My. NT Ain's primary partnership responsibility with additional oversight from Minister Al-Samari's personal security detail. The procedural terminology concealed significant political maneuvering. Someone with extraordinary influence had effectively overridden internal Academy security protocols through ministerial intervention, creating a carefully balanced compromise that maintained institutional dignity while achieving practical objectives beyond standard procedures. Sasha recognized the sophisticated political navigation, her respect for the unseen ministerial authority increasing despite limited direct information. Expedition preparation briefing begins in 30 minutes, Professor Emeria continued, transferring modified authorization documentation to both Naruto and Sasha through their respective identification crystals. Minister Al-Samari specifically requested your immediate participation in preliminary artifact analysis procedures, Mr. Uzumaki. Your specialized knowledge rigor, Ding first-age sealing techniques apparently represents significant research value despite security classification concerns. This additional information, that the minister specifically cited knowledge of ancient sealing techniques rather than general archaeological expertise, further confirmed connections between Naruto's unusual capabilities and the expedition's true purpose beyond standard academic research. The political and historical implications continued expanding beyond normal educational parameters into matters potentially affecting dimensional stability across multiple territories. As they departed the containment facility toward expedition preparation areas, Naruto maintained his characteristic relaxed demeanor despite the dramatic status reversal and its implications regarding high-level political interest in his specialized knowledge. Sasha, walking beside him with professional composure, found herself increasingly certain that her training partner represented something far more significant than merely an unusual transfer student with unconventional abilities. The question remained whether that significance represented threat or opportunity, destroyer or creator, as conflicting mythological interpretations suggested. Tomorrow's expedition to the northern ruins might finally provide concrete evidence regarding Naruto's true nature and its connections to dimensional stability concerns that had prompted unprecedented ministerial intervention in Academy operations. Whatever revelations awaited them among ancient temples and forgotten sealing arrays, Sasha remained determined to fulfill both her professional responsibilities and personal commitment to understanding threats potentially affecting her family's historical obligations regarding barrier maintenance. If Naruto truly embodied some aspect of the mythological Azure Destroyer, she would ensure that any destructive potential remained appropriately contained through vigilant observation and strategic intervention when necessary. What Shikulo dramatically her understanding of both cosmic history and her own bloodline's purpose would transform through discoveries awaiting them beneath the northern ruins, revelations that would challenge everything she believed about destruction, creation, and the necessary balance between opposing cosmic forces. Chapter 3 End. The End. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.